Chapter 460. It was true that competition was the driving force for human progress. However, after watching the freshman competition, Luoya realized that the competition between women was sometimes even scarier. After betting all his money on AI Lizzie, Luoya didn't enter the spectator seats. Instead, he went to the encampment assigned by the higher-ups of the battle arena to watch the competition. After all, Luoya's reputation was a little too big now. Entering the spectator seats might cause unnecessary trouble. Originally, Chris didn't want to recruit anyone this year because he wanted to pursue Kadia. However, because he hit it off with AI Lizzie, he decided to make an exception and recruit another year. However, Chris didn't expect that Luoya wasn't happy after hearing her words. Instead, his face twitched. Yes, it's really not bad. The black-haired young man cursed in his heart as he forced himself to turn his attention to the live broadcast. As night fell, the misty forest began to be filled with thick fog. This year's freshmen were also nervous as they entered the forest under the accompaniment of the guide spirits. In the preliminaries, AI Lizzie obviously hid her strength. Apart from revealing that she was a level 4 source ranker, there was nothing special about her. As for the battle against Shadow of the Ring, Luoya, as a spectator, couldn't watch. It should be out soon. The amount of magic in the secret territory is rising rapidly. It has broken through the alert level. Amidst the frantic voice of the Mystic Realm surveillance officer, the alarm sounded. As the news spread, a large number of staff members quickly rushed to the scene and maintained order with ease. They acted decisively and did not panic at all, forming a sharp contrast with the freshmen. The reason was simple. After the 2 accidents in the entrance exam in 3 years, the emergency department was no longer surprised. It was just that the number of accidents continued to increase to 3 in 4 years. In fact, they were more relaxed this year. After all, there were no characters on the level of Noa Ayer and Xia Luod in the secret territory. The level of danger wasn't as high as Luoya's. The reason for such a big commotion was simple. It was AI Lizzie's intention. With this thought, Luoya finally remembered AI Lizzie's words at noon. Tisk, so she's fooling around after entering the secret territory? Really? Last year, it was Luoya who caused the turmoil in the secret territory. 2 years ago, it was Lillian who caused the turmoil. Because of this reason, the two were often mentioned together. AI Lizzie should have caused a commotion in this entrance exam and turned the legend of 2 people into 3. Regarding the silver-haired girl's childish behavior, Roha was quite speechless, but he couldn't say anything. After all, it was Elisa's freedom to work hard in the exam. Even if Roha knew her plan in advance, he wouldn't restrict her in order to not tie her hands and feet. After last year's 3 consecutive bombs, this year's freshman finally produced a new ring-bearer. This hard-won appearance of a new faction caused the crowd to erupt into cheers and applause. Luoya finally breathed a sigh of relief. After AI Lizzie was surrounded by the freshmen of the theocracy, Luoya didn't appear again. He only silently watched the girl from above as she dealt with the various people. A faint sense of satisfaction emerged in his heart. Looking at AI Lizzie who was surrounded by the crowd below, Luoya couldn't help but think of the girl who didn't even dare to touch the tableware many years ago. For a moment, his heart was filled with emotions, and his eyes were somewhat moist. The birth of the 3rd ring-bearer completely broke the balance of the 2 ring-bearers in the academy. Now that the war had just ended, the students of the 2 countries were especially sensitive about this. On the distant high platform, the black-haired girl with purple eyes was already discussing this matter. However, after returning to Grey Hall, Luoya didn't sleep. Instead, he started a series of work. Not mentioning the routine duties of the new faction member list, Luoya recently had a lot of new problems. Luoya's situation was very simple. As a special commissioner of the Holy See, the black-haired boy would participate in the mission of searching for traces of the fog of concealment. Of course, this mission had another name, and that was the rescue plan of Tark Fortress. With so many researchers, scholars, and students with extraordinary strength waiting for the mission, added together, it was actually a huge force. From the perspective of cost, rather than investing a huge amount of money to let the soldiers on the front line search, it was better to let the more powerful and free students do the job. As for the possible casualties, it had already been neglected to a certain extent. The non-transcendents would work hard during the war to supply supplies to the front lines, while the transcendents were combatants. As long as they were combatants, casualties were inevitable. No matter where they were, as long as they were still within the human community, they couldn't escape the huge threat brought by the mutated species. The freshmen had just entered the academy, and perhaps they didn't feel it under the excitement, but the second-year students like Luoya who needed an internship had already felt a vague sense of tension. "I say, what have you been looking at since the beginning? Aren't you going to sleep? Who do you think I'm here because of? If I didn't come back early in the morning and saw a wild cat who couldn't control her bloodline squatting in front of Grey Hall, I probably would have gone to sleep." Rose Dawn, huh? At the end of the last school year, Luoya suggested to Wilhelmina to invite Noah Iyer, Xia Lot, and the others to join the Dawn Association. At that time, the girl accepted the suggestion, but Noah Iyer was hesitant. After all, as a princess, joining such a small organization might not be a good thing. "I don't trust anyone except for my dear." In the words of the Princess Knight's letter, she was originally an agent who ran the organization when the awakened of the Akate family wasn't around. Now, she was just returning the organization to its rightful owner. Seeing Wilhelmina's sincere words and expectations, Luoya could only bite the bullet. It had to be said that the name of the organization was quite refreshing, and it was more in line with the preferences of the majority of the female members. As for the name change, Wilhelmina, who valued practicality, didn't object, so the proposal was passed smoothly. After the reorganization, the new Rose Dawn indeed displayed great strength. As the members of Rose Dawn gradually grew, the organization's strength and influence would also continue to increase. In the end, it might even be close to the Twilight Sage Association of the Second Era. Every time Luoya thought of this, he felt a great pressure on his shoulders. That's right, after entering the second year, Luoya and the others' cultural studies had come to an end. Next, it was basically practical courses that focused on going out for missions. And in this human environment, it became a variety of joint military missions. As for the wishes of Selena and the others, Luoya naturally respected it. But the problem was that the problem children in the Knight's country were almost as good as Wilhelmina in this aspect. When they heard that it was up to Luoya to decide, they immediately stopped caring. The brown-haired girl on the sofa looked at Luoya, who was working, and was a little embarrassed. She wagged her tail and suggested, but her words were quickly rejected by the young man. "Is that so? I'm sorry. It's nothing." William and Teresa went to the joint meeting. Gelt is in his room studying the ancient books written by the giant bloodline. Juliana went to look for your sister. Oh, she said something weird about wanting to join the True Ancestors faction. Stuart is probably in the training ground. Thinking of this, the young man sighed helplessly. But before he could think of a solution, the door of the room was suddenly knocked. The student on duty came in with a letter. After Luoya opened the letter, he couldn't help but frown slowly. "Respected Mr. Luoya, after comprehensive consideration, we sincerely invite you to participate in the Tucker Incident Search and Rescue Seminar." Chapter 461. In the Academic Research Center of St. Freya Academy, the conference room that could accommodate dozens of people was very noisy at this time. A black-haired young man looked at the professors who stood up and refuted each other in front of him. He took a sip of tea, looked around, and sighed. Luoya had imagined a lot of situations that might happen in this conference. For example, the scholars of the Austin Empire might refuse to cooperate because of some emotional reasons, or the views of different countries were different. However, after really participating, the young man found that the reality was much worse than he thought. Luoya was not called as a scholar, but as a witness. No, when I arrived the next day, the fortress had already disappeared. This is a reaction from my bloodline, and many soldiers also witnessed the abnormality of the fog at that time. This is a memory brought to me by my bloodline. Recalling the question and answer with the scholars before, Luo Ye's face couldn't help but become gloomy. Yes, this was the main reason why Luo Ye was invited, which was to prove that the 6 disasters did the incident in Tucker Fortress. For Luo Ye, who had seen several 6 disasters, and even had the crown stone, this was a fact that didn't need to be debated. However, this feeling and historical experience couldn't convince the objectors. Helpless, Luo Ye could only push everything to the memory of his bloodline, which was an answer that others could understand. I think this fog has no direct relationship with the disappearance of Tucker Fortress. Those soldiers may have seen it wrongly because of the strange weather, or maybe because they were under the illusion of the enemy. For 2 whole hours, in the face of several scholars who asked him several times, the black-haired young man insisted that it was the 6 disasters who did it. However, there weren't many people who supported Luo Ye. Most people were still inclined to believe that this was a man-made incident. But being reasonable didn't mean being correct. Rather, it would be better to say that it would lead the investigation to the wrong path. Moreover, the black-haired young man felt that finding reason in this matter was wrong to begin with, because the disappearance of the Tucker Fortress itself was unreasonable. In the afternoon, there was no progress in the meeting. Roha was looking forward to finding clues, but now he felt like he was watching a monkey show. He could only sigh that the reality is too cruel. Things often don't go well. Investigating the Tucker Fortress incident and the mist of concealment wasn't just a mission that Luo Ye received from the academy. It was also a promise that the young man made to the princess. No matter whether Prince Kai Yin survived or not, Luo Ye had to give an answer. Understood. Searching the library's database. Countdown, 13 minutes. Please wait. How are you able to control the Academy's artificial sprites? Isn't this something that only the Dean can use? Lady Luo Ye Akat has the level 1 authority inherited from Lady Estrid. She has the right to give orders, grant authority, and rank. In order to reverse the direction of the investigation, Luo Ye needed a large number of ancient books to prove the existence and characteristics of the 6 disasters. But fortunately, as one of the world's 3 major libraries, the National Wisdom Library should be able to take on this task. Of course, the artificial sprite wasn't searching at a certain level. She could only roughly screen out the possible ancient books for Luo Ye. The specific work still required a lot of manpower. But under the mission system of St. Freya Academy, as long as there were points, there was no need to worry about a lack of students. And the students of St. Freya Academy were definitely qualified in terms of quality. Originally, the black-haired young man wanted to hand this job over to the AI Lizzie. But after obtaining the identity of a ring-bearer, the AI Lizzie became busy. Today, she was invited by the School of Thought to visit. On the other hand, the silver-haired young lady wasn't too interested in history. In the library that was specially set aside for a large conference room, the black-haired young man and the tall man sorted out the information that Margaret filtered out. But in the midst of sorting out, Gelt suddenly told Luo Ye something. It seems that you really did a serious investigation after going back. So, what did you find out? Is that so? However, Gulan Daer was the king of the giants and the last king of the giants. If his death was related to the savior, does that mean that the disappearance of the giants was also related to the savior? If it was really something that was unbearable to recall, not remembering it might be a blessing. The young man exhaled, turned his attention back to the information in front of him, and continued to browse seriously. In Luo Ye's previous life, the ancient country with thousands of years of brilliant civilization had a saying that, history is a mirror. This was a very normal saying for China, which had thousands of years of history books, but in fact, it was abnormal on a global scale. In the world of Xia, the situation was much better. It wasn't that the people here had the quality and foundation to pass down the culture, but the Xia humans had a long lifespan. But even so, the historical inheritance of the Xia humans wasn't as smooth as imagined. The westward migration at the end of the Second Era could be said to have almost destroyed half of the civilization. As a result, the various information that the ancient Austin Empire painstakingly collected in the Second Era was once again incomplete. But even so, Luo Ye still found some sporadic clues, but ironically, most of them were obtained from the cultists. The Saint Heroes Society still had some understanding of the so-called oracle, but it was very metaphysical and abstract. Looking at this information, Luo Ye almost couldn't help but recall the nightmare he had in the hotel on the night of the Tuck Fortress incident. Previously, Luo Ye thought that the arrival of the mist of concealment had aroused his subconscious, causing him to dream of Mother Goddess. But now, it seemed that there was actually another explanation. After pondering for a long time, the black-haired young man roughly speculated the cause of the incident. But he had to admit that the cause wasn't that important now. The most important thing was how to find the damn mist. But to Luo Ye's disappointment, he couldn't find any information about it. After studying for a long time, this was it. Sigh, forget it, it's only the first day. For the rest of the time, the black-haired young man and the tall giant bloodline warrior bent over the table and studied until late at night. They only left together when the library was about to close. After spending a few hours together, Luo Ye also discovered the similarities between himself and Gelt. That was, they were both history enthusiasts and wouldn't find it boring to read historical materials. Luo Ye's bloodline ability allowed him to easily distinguish which were true records and which were useless nonsense. Gelt's trace source substance wasn't only powerful in battle, but it also had a wonderful use in archaeology. That was to read the memory of objects. An ancient item had been passed down for thousands of years. Not to mention the location where it was stored, even the owner was likely to have hundreds of owners. However, Gelt's trace could only see a part of it. For example, Gelt might see when it was a piece of cloth or when it was worn by a young girl. Everything was random. Is this a man's divine ability? Shaking his head and throwing some bad thoughts to the back of his head, the black-haired young man finally returned to Grey Hall near midnight. At this time, most of the lights in Grey Hall had been extinguished and the students had also entered their sleep. Luo Ye didn't want to disturb others, but he didn't immediately enter. Instead, he stood in the courtyard and carefully observed. Now that both of them were students of St. Freya Academy and were also ring-bearers, it was naturally impossible for them to sleep together. Therefore, the black-haired young man deliberately checked the surroundings, but to his surprise, he didn't find anything. With doubts in his heart, the young man entered the hall with light footsteps. After thinking about it, he suddenly felt that it was normal. After all, Grey Hall was in a secluded mountain, and A.I. Lizi's temporary dormitory building was located in the central campus. The distance between the two was indeed very far. Although A.I. Lizi's ability to teleport under the moon was powerful, but how could she cross such a long distance? Under the moonlight, the black-haired young man stood at the door and fell into silence. Chapter 462. The master bedroom of Ashen Hall was elegantly decorated and classy. It was a private space specially prepared for the ring-bearers. Looking at the sleeping girl in her pajamas, Luo Ye stood at the door and didn't know what to do. Under normal circumstances, to avoid trouble, Luo Ye would go to the empty room upstairs. But after the expansion of the faction, there were more students living there. If he was seen, it would arouse suspicion. Nonsense, she's already a ring-bearer, how can she? At this moment, the silver-haired girl was hugging Luo Ye's pillow and lying on her side with her back facing the door. Luo Ye was already in front of her, but A.I. Lizi didn't move. Her breathing was steady, and her cherry-colored lips trembled rhythmically. Her brush-like eyelashes were beautiful and cute, but there was no sign of waking up. How is this possible? At night, A.I. Lizi's body should have recovered due to her bloodline. In other words, is she mentally exhausted? Coupled with the exhaustion from the battle in the secret realm and the change in environment, it's normal for her to be tired. Thinking of this, Luo Ye's decision naturally changed. Remember in a second. Big brother. Big brother, hug. Hearing A.I. Lizi's murmur, the black-haired boy couldn't help but stop his persuasion. After being stunned for a few seconds, Luoya carefully observed the girl in front of him and found that Ai Lizi's red eyes were only half open. She was still half asleep. Thinking of this, Luoya blinked and didn't know if he should wake her up completely. On the other side, Ai Lizi couldn't wait any longer. The silver-haired girl crawled on the bed and directly crashed into Luoya's arms. Sleep, so sleepy, over there, there's Juliana, so that's the case. Leaving it to Juliana to deal with the aftermath, then there shouldn't be any problems. Stroking the hair of the sleeping girl in his arms, Luoya's golden eyes were filled with gentleness. The desire to protect rose in his heart as he accompanied Ai Lizi to sleep. Oh no, I fell asleep alone. After the commotion caused by the entrance exam and her becoming a ring bearer, more and more people started paying attention to Ai Lizi, and the amount of time she could spend with Luoya naturally decreased. Ai Lizi was extremely dissatisfied with this, but there was nothing she could do about it. Last night, the silver-haired girl finally found Juliana to disguise herself in the dormitory. She sneaked into Luoya's room with ease, but she didn't expect to find anything. In the process of waiting, she was seduced by the young man's quilt. She became more and more relaxed and finally fell asleep. Wait, this is Big Brother. Feeling the movement, Luoya frowned and gently opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was a blushing girl. Feeling a bit strange, the young man quickly sobered up and couldn't help but laugh. Bro, Lord Big Brother, you're the one who's the worst. You didn't go to another room this time. You scared me a little, I see. What's wrong? It's okay if your hair is messed up when you wake up. Thinking of the two of them sleeping together for a night, the girl's heart raced. Her heartbeat was unprecedentedly clear. Not knowing what to do, the girl hurriedly got up from Luoya's embrace, but Luoya's pursuit didn't stop there. Me? How is that possible? After spring, Leinster, where St. Freya's Academy was located, gradually became hot. The two of them hugged for a night, causing the girl to sweat a little and her clothes to become a little transparent. In the past, Ai Lizi wouldn't have thought much of it, but for some reason, she felt abnormally embarrassed now. Aren't we going to stay together for a while? After becoming a ring bearer, Miss White Rose can spend less time with me, right? Hearing Luoya's teasing, Ai Lizi burrowed under the blanket. It was rare that she didn't have the strength to fight back. It was as if she had returned to the state a few years ago. Feeling this long-lost cuteness, Luoya couldn't help but smile, and his mood couldn't help but improve. The girl's shyness didn't disappear from when she woke up in the morning and continued to the dining table. As for why Luoya knew about this, it was mainly because of the girl's skin color. Ai Lizi, open your mouth. It's invalid. I suddenly want to feed you something. What's wrong? You've been like this for a few years when you were young. Are you embarrassed now? The girl who retorted blushed and held Luoya's fork in her mouth. She raised her red eyes and stared at Luoya. After swallowing the food, she pouted and muttered to herself weakly. What are you talking about, Ai Lizi? Why would I do that? Looking at the smiling Luoya, the silver-haired girl pouted, but the black-haired boy wasn't moved. He enjoyed Ai Lizi's rare little dissatisfaction and embarrassment. Luoya didn't interfere with Ai Lizi's choice at all. However, the outside world expressed their understanding. After all, the relationship between the two was now known to everyone. However, unlike what outsiders thought was convenient for communication, Ai Lizi's real purpose was to shorten the distance at night. The boy felt a little regretful, but he didn't have any opinions. He could only put most of his energy into missions and learning. According to Luoya's speculation, the 6 disasters should be able to be killed, just like what his ancestor Vincent did. However, whether the people in Tucker Fortress would return after killing them was a question that no one could answer. More importantly, they couldn't find traces of the fog of concealment. Because this was a big problem related to the entire Rosette Dawn, no matter if it was Golden Rose, Red Rose, or Luoya's own faction, they all sent a large number of people. These students were the first process to filter out the relevant records. The second step was taken by Gelt, who had a better understanding of the foreign language, to further analyze it. Finally, it was handed over to Luoya. There was no doubt that this was a boring task in people's eyes, but its significance was very great. It was even related to the life and death of hundreds of thousands of people. When Luoya was looking for people, he especially emphasized this point. Therefore, the students who participated were more serious and responsible. Under this kind of unity and cooperation, after nearly a month of hard work, Luoya and others finally found some suspected clues. It was an ancient scroll collected by the ancient Austin Empire in the Second Era. Because it was only a remnant page, the author was unknown. However, it did have content about the 6 disasters and Mother Goddess, and it was more consistent with what Luoya knew. Even now, in the Third Era, Mother Goddess was still in a state of hibernation. She might wake up, but it was definitely not for a long time. If the 6 disasters were active in this period of time, perhaps they wouldn't be able to walk out of 100 miles until the extinction of mankind. The moon, since ancient times, has been regarded as a symbol of femininity and also a symbol of mystery. Many of Shia's bloodlines and curses couldn't be separated from the cooperation of the moon. It could be said that the moon determined half of the celestial phenomenon, and the moon in Shia's world didn't play cards according to common sense and often had many different patterns. Research related to the moon had always attracted many scholars, but so far, there was no theory that could be confirmed. It was a mysterious and unknown field, and once there was a change, it would affect all corners of the world. It was because of this that Luoya felt that it was very likely to be a signal that the 6 disasters were active. Of course, as an important piece of information, Luoya asked Gelt to use the source substance to trace back, but what the brawny man saw was of little value. It was probably that someone had flipped through this book hundreds of years ago. However, unlike Luoya, because the reader didn't know much about the 6 disasters, the reader quickly lost interest in this book that he couldn't understand. Luoya wasn't surprised by this. After all, it was normal for Austin to oppose whatever the Vatican wanted to do. Originally, Luoya wanted to contact Lillian and find another reason to search for information in the Millennium Glory Library, but after careful consideration, he felt that it was inappropriate. But no matter what, the scale of the investigation was already very large. It could be said that it was a rare occurrence in 100 years, and it was only a matter of time before they found other important clues. However, when everything was going smoothly, an emergency message that shook the entire human world was sent back by the East, covering the world with a layer of uneasiness and fear. The invasion of the mutants had begun. Chapter 463. The invasion of the mutants. This was a word that no one wanted to mention, and no one liked. Whether it was in the theocracy or the Austin Empire, every citizen would tell their children about that terrible period in the past. The invasion of the mutants was like the most widespread and terrifying legend. During that period of time, the people did not see the light of day, and for extraordinaires, it was a disaster to some extent. The country of scholars was the training center for the extraordinaries in Shia. As reserve soldiers, the students of Leinster knew more information than other places. However, even though they had expected the invasion of the mutants, when the news really came, many people still couldn't accept it. Of course, in the eyes of the ambitious, this was also an era of crisis and challenges. Under the test of war and the tempering of life and death, the old system was likely to collapse, and new forces were likely to rise. Before the shuffle was over, everyone had a chance. The black-haired young man naturally had no objection to this, not only because it was related to the academic credits of the country of knights and the others, but more importantly, these missions of the Alliance Army belonged to the military. Every mission completed was a kind of support to the front line. One of the reasons was naturally that the transfer students of the country of knights were stronger, but more importantly, Luoya played a role. The black-haired young man arranged missions for everyone that were suitable for their strength and specialty, and would constantly adjust with time. This was the most important reason. Witnessing the rapid growth in strength of Paul and the others, Luoya couldn't help but sigh at the huge potential of the protagonists in the original work. However, he wasn't too surprised because the young man discovered that not only Paul and the others, but also the people around Luoya, from the people of the country of knights to the members of the Blue Hall faction, were all improving rapidly. And the scholars had also explained this. The emergence of extraordinaires was ultimately due to the body mutation caused by demonic elements. Just like karma, when the level of demonic elements increased, the strength of the human extraordinaires would almost passively increase. This was also the premise that heroes were born in troubled times in previous wars against the aliens. That's right, it was the girls who were called the Chosen Ones led by Lillian and the others. Of course, neither Lillian nor the Purple Rose faction acknowledged this rumor. But as someone who shared the same bloodline as the young lady, Luoya didn't doubt it at all because no one knew better than Luoya about Lillian's talents. Her talent was rarely seen even in the history of the Chosen King species. If the origin substance was correct, perhaps even Luoya wouldn't be a match for her. Luoya wasn't the least bit surprised by the ascension of a chosen child. He also interpreted Lillian's recent distance from him as something she had no choice but to do in order to focus on breaking through. The young man was unable to describe this feeling, but his heart was filled with complex emotions. After all, even Luoya had just broken through not too long ago. Even if he ignored his pride as an elder, Ai Lizi's speed of improvement was too abnormal. No matter what, she had the hope of breaking through to Source Rank 3 before she reached Source Rank. This was too much of a dream. No, I don't feel that way. What's wrong? Facing Ai Lizi's answer, Luoya didn't know what to say. He could only stare at the young lady in silence for a while before shaking his head and changing the topic. After all, as the initiator of everything, the young man had the least right to ask others to slow down their progress. If it weren't for the chaotic times, Luoya might really ask the young lady to slow down her progress. But in the context of the war with the mutants, the young man was worried and hoped that Ai Lizi would become stronger as soon as possible. In this tense race against time, Luoya continued to gather information while managing Rosette Dawn and the Green faction. He hoped to find clues about the 6 disasters, while becoming stronger. But to his surprise, a sudden message and a mission broke the silence of the meeting. Mr. Luoya Akut, what do you think of this information? I see. What's the reason? In the meeting room, the black-haired young man read the letter from the front line and analyzed it rationally. His expression was calm, and his tone was calm. But in fact, at this time, the black-haired young man already had some bad premonitions in his heart. When they heard the news, the members of the meeting were extremely excited and indignant. They felt that they finally caught the tail of the enemy. Even Luoya instinctively thought that the hidden fog had appeared again. However, with the release of detailed information and some details, the black-haired young man realized that things didn't seem to be the case. After the incident at Tuk Fortress, all the countries had increased their troops to the east. This town had become a kind of transit station. However, recently, a group of Austin Empire's troops passed by here, but they couldn't find the location of the town. The officers who thought that they were lost went back the way they came, so they hired a local guide to set off again. As a result, they did find the location, but there was no trace of the town. It was the same large-scale disappearance, the same silence, and the same army. There were so many similarities that it was difficult not to associate this with the incident at Tuk Fortress. Therefore, the frontline command immediately sent this information to the scholar country, who was in charge of this matter, and asked for immediate action. However, after carefully studying it, Luoya felt that this was not the doing of the 6 disasters. As a monster that devoured everything, the hidden fog erased all traces of civilization wherever it went. It was impossible to leave anything extra behind. And judging from the conditions, it didn't seem right. Luoya's quality of sleep during this period of time was not bad. It was obvious that he didn't feel the breath of the Mother Goddess. Judging from the weather, the area where the incident happened was no different from other places. The entire town of Bray, including the residents of the town, is less than 1,000 people. Whether it is in terms of numbers or strength, there is a huge gap between the 6 disasters and the Tuck Fortress. The 6 disasters is a civilization killer. There is no need for them to deliberately attack this kind of border area. The black-haired young man basically denied the possibility of the 2 disappearances being related based on the available information. But after hearing his words, many scholars in the room didn't seem to care and began to raise objections one by one. Originally, there was a controversy about the incident at Tuck Fortress being caused by those legendary monsters. Using this as the standard of judgment, naturally, there is no connection. At the meeting, several representatives refuted Luo Ya's point of view one by one. In the end, they ignored the young man's objection and established the decision to issue an investigation mission. But when he heard this, the black-haired young man's face sank. Because his unique sense of smell from years of experience in conspiracies was telling Luo Ya that everything was not as simple as it seemed. In the end, these extraordinary people of Leinster had been pampered for too long. They had long lost their sense of smell for danger. In a hurry for quick results, they finally passed the decision to send an investigation team. But for Luo Ya, this was a huge problem. The decision at the meeting was difficult to overturn. In desperation, Luo Ya could only visit Lillian to discuss using the authority of the Rose Council to ban the recruitment of this mission in St. Freya Academy. But after hearing the young man's idea, the black-haired young woman thought for a long time and rejected it. Indeed. It seems that I have to go personally. And on the other hand, although the possibility was extremely small, if this matter was really related to the 6 disasters, then Luo Ya's existence was necessary. Only the young man's ability could make the fog of concealment hesitate and not act recklessly. I'll go. I've recently advanced to the 2nd level of the source rank. I can use this opportunity to test my skills. Luo Ya heard Lillian's words and immediately rejected it. Just like Lillian's thoughts, Luo Ya also attached great importance to the only sister in this world who shared the same bloodline as him. He was determined not to let the young woman participate in this mission that felt wrong. And after hearing Luo Ya's answer, Lillian also revealed a smile, but she didn't say anything. Senior sister, you. After a long silence, Lillian opened her red lips and said so. The black-haired young man couldn't help but sit up straight. After pondering for a moment, the young woman spoke softly. You're saying. Lillian said so with some difficulty and forced a smile. Her amethyst-like pupils carried an indescribable reluctance and faint sorrow as she looked at Luo Ya and said softly. I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to meet again in the future. Chapter 464. Inside the room, the black-haired young man gazed at the young lady who was forcing a smile on her face. His golden eyes widened gradually and he fell into silence. Heading to the front lines during the war with the mutants was considered a rather severe punishment, especially at this point in time. I'm sorry that I didn't tell you until now. But this is indeed my mistake and has nothing to do with you, Luo Ya. You don't have to blame yourself. Initially, we were too far away from each other. I thought that I would cherish the 2 years in the academy, but I messed it up due to my negligence. Gazing at the sorrowful smile on Lillian's face and hearing her words of self-blame, the black-haired young man couldn't help but clench his fists. His heart burned with uncontrollable rage. But unlike usual, a portion of the rage in his heart was directed at himself. No matter if it was Noah Iyer or Xia Luot, the young man had risked his life to protect them. But Lillian was different. Even in that dangerous historical segment, the one who suffered the most danger was Lillian herself. Remember this for a second. Luo Ya couldn't accept that Lillian was in such a predicament because of him. On the other hand, Luo Ya hated the person who forced the young lady into such a predicament. Got to say, no matter from which angle, Luo Ya, as the emperor of the Austin Empire, wasn't an enemy. The massive amount of resources he controlled wasn't something that Luo Ya could resist at this stage. But if it were for Lillian, the young man was willing to give up his peaceful life and do something that he would never do in the past. Why are you showing such a solemn expression? Are you thinking of doing something for your big sister? Upon hearing Lillian's question, the black-haired young man went silent in an instant. Upon looking at this young man, Lillian's gaze became increasingly gentle. She gently caressed Luoya's cheek, narrowed her eyes, and said softly with joy. Senior sister, you're saying, time. This is what we need the most right now. As long as I have time to grow, no matter what obstacles there are, I will definitely break through them and return to your side. I promise. Luoya couldn't help but widen his eyes as he stared at the affectionate young lady in front of him. He couldn't help but feel touched and reluctant to part with her. He couldn't help but reach out and hug Lillian in his arms. I think I understand why senior sister wasn't born in the Akot family. If I was born in the Akot family, if I met you when I was young, I would have become a cripple who relies on you for everything. Why? Because you are such a person. If you could abandon all your responsibilities, your life would be much easier than it is now. It is because you can't make such a choice that you are you. Chapter 465. At night, in Blue Hall, the black-haired boy looked at the silver-haired girl who was clenching her fists excitedly and couldn't help but think of Ai Lizi's behavior a few minutes ago. It turned out that the law of true fragrance was applicable in any world, and Ai Lizi was well versed in the art of the deal. The girl who had been doting on him since young raised her eyes. Her crimson pupils were covered with water vapor, and her teardrop look was too effective for Luoya's special attack. She pulled on the boy's clothes and cried a few times, "Don't go," and Luoya broke through her defense on the spot. Generally speaking, children would yearn for independence in the process of growing up, so they would give up on being spoiled. However, Ai Lizi didn't have this thought at all. In fact, it was more accurate to say that Luoya's heart was welded to the gas pedal, making it even stronger. In fact, this time, Luoya didn't have to listen to Ai Lizi's opinion in investigating the new missing persons case. As a student of St. Freya Academy and the main witness of the previous incident, this mission was almost an obligation for the boy. It would be strange if he didn't go. However, it was also true that the girl was lonely because of this. To be able to exchange for so many promises made Ai Lizi overjoyed. No, Senior Lillian isn't what you think. No, Senior Lillian is. Sigh, forget it. With this thought in mind, the boy didn't nag anymore and changed the topic. As Luoya turned his attention to other aspects, Ai Lizi finally stopped talking. But after the two of them chatted for a long time, the girl suddenly went silent for a moment, then changed the topic to Luoya. Radon. Of course, I remember. After all, it's related to the Akot family. But as the saying goes, plans can't keep up with changes. The overall change in the environment made Luoya unable to continue with his previous plan, and Lillian's safety also made him worried. Ai Lizi, as we speak, the soldiers on the front lines might be fighting the mutants. The Alliance meeting is being held, and Father will be heading to the front lines soon. At this time, I really can't stand by and do nothing. No, big brother, that's not what I meant. I will also work hard to be able to help Father and elder brother as soon as possible. Then I'll increase my strength quickly and steadily. The black-haired young man smiled and looked to his side. The silver-haired girl looked back at him gently. The two of them leaned against each other, silently and cherishing the night before departure. The following days were a little busy for Luoya. After the mission was issued, various researchers and experts began to take action one after another. The border of the Austin Empire near the town of Bray began to become the focus of the Kingdom of Scholars, and Lillian's team was among them. This time, because Lillian objected to Luoya participating in the investigation, the black-haired young man did not sign up publicly. Instead, he decided to follow the team after they set off. This kind of behavior was more appropriate in terms of procedure. Due to the number of students, Selena and the others, who had not reached level 3 of source rank, were assigned to the second team. They were about a day later than Lillian and the others. Chapter 466. Beside the campfire at night, Luoya's eyes widened as he listened to the young man's words. The grilled fish in his hand accidentally fell to the ground. On the other side, the noisy Selina and Juliana suddenly quieted down. They looked at Luoya and Stuart and stood up. Fog. Where is it? Stuart, how far is it from here? Fog was originally just one of the many natural phenomena. It wasn't even a special phenomenon. However, since more than half a year ago, this ordinary natural phenomenon was no longer ordinary with the appearance of a certain monster. Beside the campfire, Stuart picked up the map and urgently confirmed the location of the fog. Selina's tail bristled as she vigilantly watched the surroundings. Juliana's ability improved a lot at night. She began to quickly gather the necessary supplies and prepared to escape. However, after standing up and sensing for a long time, the black-haired young man didn't act rashly. Looking down at the strands of cold air wrapped around his hand, the black-haired young man frowned slightly. Based on his previous experience in the eastern region, even if the distance was far, the monsters of the 6 disasters should be able to sense each other. However, this time, Luoya didn't feel anything unusual. Luoya, what should we do? Should we evacuate now? The anxious Selina and Juliana asked one after another. However, the black-haired young man shook his head after a short consideration. Well, it's very far from us. It's in the core area. It seems to be fine here. Stuart's report sounded for the second time. The girls couldn't help but complain. The people around the campfire breathed a sigh of relief, but they didn't relax their vigilance. The black-haired young man thought for a moment and asked Stuart, who was using the long-distance observation eye technique. No, it doesn't seem to be the case for now. After a series of questions and answers, Luoya seemed to have come to a conclusion. After hearing the black-haired young man's judgment, the three of them let out a sigh of relief. If those stubborn scholars were ignorant people who couldn't understand the horror of the 6 disasters, then the students of the Country of Nights would grow up listening to the horror stories of the 6 disasters. It was a good thing that they could avoid facing the trauma of their childhood. Although they could basically determine that it wasn't the fog of concealment that appeared in front of them, the appearance of the fog in the core area that they were supposed to investigate had also aroused the teenagers' vigilance. Luoya could already imagine what would happen to the first team after that. After discovering that the fog wasn't aggressive, they would definitely rush in to find out the truth. It seemed like the fog was just like a bait. After a long while, the silhouette who did not get an answer shook his head. His eyes turned towards the place where the many powerful extraordinary individuals were gathered, and his figure slowly disappeared into the depths of the fog. Early the next morning, some fog began to appear near the campsite of Luoya and the others. But after sensing it, the teenager realized that it was just an ordinary white fog in the mountains. Stuart, who was on night duty, also reported the situation, saying that the fog in the forest ahead didn't have any changes overnight. Selina and Juliana were relieved after hearing this. The teenager who put on the blindfold also relaxed a little. The atmosphere in the campsite gradually returned to being relaxed, but Luoya still didn't let down his guard after thinking for a while. Looking at the white fog nearby, Luoya didn't voice his unfounded concerns. He could only tell the three of them to stay vigilant and not let down their guard. Then, he carried out the daily routine of communication. For more than a month, Luoya hadn't shown up, so Lillian and the others didn't know of his existence. The young lady didn't care much about it, but after confirming that Lillian and the others were safe, the black-haired young man felt a little relieved. As for the next plan, just as Luoya expected, the first team decided to continue the investigation after some discussion. Chapter 467. In the misty night, the black-haired boy looked at the old man in front of him motionlessly as if he had fallen into stillness. Beside him, Selina and others also reacted after a moment of daze, staring at the white-haired old man dumbfounded. No, how is it possible? Hearing Paul's familiar words, the black-haired boy widened his eyes and stared at the old man in disbelief for a long time. Finally, he saw a little shadow of Paul in the past. However, before Luoya could ask, the old man fainted again. Luoya shouted anxiously, but the old man seemed to have exhausted all his strength after saying that sentence. No matter how he called, he couldn't wake up. Luoya and others looked at each other helplessly, then they immediately began to examine him. Luoya, is this really Paul? Facing Selena's question with a nervous voice, the black-haired boy was silent for a while. After a moment of hesitation, the black-haired girl with red eyes stretched out her hand and gently cut the skin on the old man's hand. She dipped her fingertips into the crimson blood and put it into her mouth. The moment it entered her mouth, Juliana's face suddenly changed, then she tilted her head and coughed. Juliana, who had once fought with Paul in the Challenger Cup arena and tasted the young man's blood once, concluded with an ugly face. As her words fell, Luoya and others fell into complete silence. Time had always been the rarest and most mysterious part of Shay's spells. For a long time, it had even been treated as a non-existent spell. Even if it did exist, most of it was forbidden. The reason was very simple. This kind of spell was too lethal and had too high a price to pay. From the time Luoya discovered the enemy until now, it only took more than half an hour because of the decisive command. It was almost impossible for Paul to become like this in such a short time. Even Luoya's erosion time breath couldn't absorb time so quickly. Stuart, check. The black-haired boy ordered. Stuart took off the blindfold again and looked at Paul. This time, the boy's eyes were no longer in the long-range reconnaissance mode but released a faint light green light. After a while, the boy's face turned ugly after looking back and forth twice. Stuart's new report made Luoya and the others fall into silence again. Faced with the terrible experience of their companions, the two girls, Selena and Juliana, turned pale. For them, who were at the prime of their lives, dying of old age was probably the most terrible way to die in the world. It's too late to retreat. It only took Paul half an hour to become like this. We won't be able to get out of the foggy area in half an hour. They will definitely catch up with us. The only way to save ourselves and Paul is to move forward, find and defeat the enemy. Since he recognized Paul, he naturally couldn't abandon him. On the other hand, Paul was the only person who could provide information. Maybe someone has resistance to this unknown curse, and Paul's level is the lowest in the team. Selena and the others set off again after securing Paul. The black-haired young man took the lead and quickly approached the abandoned town. As the shadow of the town gradually appeared in the white fog, the faces of Luoya and others became more and more serious. Whether it was before or now, there was no sound of fighting. Thinking of this, Selena and others became nervous. Luoya's face was also ugly, but even so, the young man still didn't lose his confidence because Lillian was in the depths of the fog. Surely there was still time. The thick fog made the visibility less than 10 meters. The surroundings were silent and there was no information. In such a situation, Luoya and others couldn't even perform a quick search and rescue. The frowning young man could only turn his head and ask the scout again. Selena. Where are Stuart and the others? What happened? Did they fall behind? Under the pressure of the Gulen Daer, Selena and others calmed down a little. The entire team began to return quickly, but what greeted them was indescribable despair and horror. 10 minutes later, the black-haired young man leaned against the wall on one side, pinching his eyebrows and thinking about the current situation. Beside him, two girls were leaning stiffly on his left and right shoulders. In the previous search, Luoya and the others didn't find anything. There were no abnormalities on the ground, and there were no traces of spatial spells nearby. However, Stuart and Paul behind him disappeared into thin air as though they were taken away by someone. There's a faint smell of blood from Paul's wound nearby. In other words, they were standing here safe and sound not long ago. But why did they disappear? Damn it! What exactly happened? When the search yielded no results, Juliana and Selena inevitably fell into panic. To the girls, powerful enemies wouldn't make them afraid. Even if they died in battle, it would be an honor for them who had received knight education since young. But now, the situation was different. Beside his left and right shoulders, the two girls trembled slightly. Their breathing was rapid, and their complexions were abnormally pale. Sensing this, Luoya couldn't help but become more solemn. The young man pinched his eyebrows and forced himself to calm down. After pondering for a while, he issued a new order: continue to search for the members of the first team, strive to converge, and think of a way to counterattack. It was an abandoned house. Judging from the scale, it should belong to the manager of the town in the past. As it was a stone building, it was slightly better preserved. However, the results of the investigation were disappointing. That was the situation in the house. It seems like there's no need to worry anymore. Marin Town. Everything that had happened here so far was chilling. However, there was a precondition, and that was this strange white fog. It was a strong fluctuation of spell power that suddenly appeared from the center of the town. The moment it appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of Selena and Juliana. The reason was simple. It was an unfamiliar aura that they had never felt before. It was also filled with evil and indescribable malice, which almost made them instinctively vigilant. Anger toward Luoya's provocation, resentment toward the frozen earth touch, and hatred toward the power of the crown stone. Luoya, who sensed something unusual, opened his eyes wide and muttered to himself. At the same time, a tall and skinny old man appeared from the other end of the white fog. His eyes were fixed on Luoya's direction with a strong expression of hatred on his face. In his hand, he held a fog-like lamp that emitted a hazy light at the end of the road. Attack! The two girls used their ultimate skills. Luoya also decided to attack with all his might. However, he didn't expect that at this moment, the ancient gods on the other side suddenly shouted in unison. Not good. Leave quickly. Gulandair and Altatia's voices sounded at the same time. However, it was all too late. The lamp in the old man's hand suddenly flickered. The next moment, an intense light shone in all directions like the sun. Everything in front of Luoya seemed to be drowned. His whole consciousness seemed to have lost its balance. It was a bottomless pit filled with darkness. Waves of extremely ominous and evil aura came from it as if all the evil in this world was buried under it. When Luoya appeared, the whole cave shrank as if it had come alive. It was as if a huge mouth had seen a delicious meal. At the same time, the young man's consciousness began to blur rapidly. Luoya. In the fog of Marin Town, under the light that seemed to absorb everything, a girl with black hair and purple eyes suddenly appeared. She picked up the young man who had fallen to the ground. The next moment, under the chants of the space cursemancers beside her, Lillian's figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 468. In the town shrouded in white fog, a golden radiance rose in the dark night like the sun. But this sudden radiance wasn't the light of hope in the morning, but the knell of death instead. The moment the young lady appeared, the slightly dimmed light shone once again. The radiance erupted again like a scythe that chased after souls. But the black-haired young lady didn't panic. The moment the second wave of attack was about to arrive, Lillian successfully shifted her body amidst the chanting of spells and left this dangerous place completely. After doing all that, the elderly man's expression relaxed slightly. He gazed into the depths of the drifting fog and began to search for something. Boom! 10 cities. The moment the 10 cities was activated, an imperceptible detection spell swept over Roja and Lillian. However, under the protection of the 10 cities, the two seemed to have disappeared, and no one was able to find any clues. Luoya, are you alright? Luoya. What's going on, Luoya? Lillian decided that she couldn't immerse herself in the resonance brought about by the blood-related relationship anymore because she knew that once Luoya was within her reach, she wouldn't be able to bear being separated from him for long. Gazing at the young man before her, Lillian closed her purple pupils and took in a deep breath. When she opened her eyes again, the trembling of her bloodline was like a resonating bowstring that couldn't be suppressed. It was a strong sense of intimacy and satisfaction brought about by the same bloodline. In an instant, all the holes in Lillian's heart were filled. The irrepressible love mixed with many other emotions affected her body and even made her feel slightly dizzy. But fortunately, Lillian didn't lose control because of this. She knew what her goal was. The black-haired, purple-eyed young lady didn't know what to do. At the same time, Luoya revealed a painful expression. Looking at this situation, Lillian forced herself to calm down and think about the reason. In an instant, Luoya disappeared as though they were erased. This was the outcome of the other members of Lillian's team. The only exception was the young lady. And this time, it was Luoya. In this case, it seemed like the Akut family's bloodline had some resistance to this unknown attack. Lillian recalled the pain of her soul being torn apart the moment she appeared. Her purple pupils shrunk abruptly. At the same time, a joyful voice sounded in the house. "You are. Good evening, Lillian Ackman. It seems like you need some advice from the witches." Upon hearing Altatia's words, the black-haired young lady fell into silence. Looking at this, the Queen of Witches curled the corners of her mouth and revealed a joyful smile. The white-haired witch. She belonged to Luoya, one of the deities that Lillian had met before. But unlike the silent, gigantic skeleton and Pei Tila who obviously had the aura of an elder, Altatia gave Lillian an extremely dangerous feeling. Chapter 469. In the room, the black-haired young lady gazed at the woman hovering in midair. Her purple pupils revealed a puzzled look and her body stiffened in an instant. Altatia stood before Lillian in silence as though waiting for her decision. Under the gaze of the witch, Lillian blushed quickly. "No, I'm not joking. I'm serious." Gazing at the black-haired young lady who flew into a rage out of humiliation, the white-haired Queen of Witches let out a sigh and said calmly. "If that's the case, can't we just do it normally?" The special relationship between two people of the same bloodline is indeed a magical phenomenon. Just the intimate contact of skin can cause many wonderful curse reactions. Even the soul will be affected. In fact, it can be done with a large amount of intimate physical contact. But the result will be the same for you, right? In the face of Altatia's rhetorical question, Lillian remained silent once again. The strong sense of intimacy brought about by blood-related relatives was like an addictive drug, which Lillian had long known. If she really did that, after endless demands and intimacy, it was almost certain that something would happen. "Lillian, what are you hesitating for? You should understand that this is actually also saving yourself. I've told you about the prophecy in the past. I wasn't joking about it, but you didn't take it seriously. Thanks to this, you're one step closer to being destroyed by this relationship. Just like now. Even though Sir Hero has become like this, you're actually happy, right?" Gazing at the black-haired young lady who retorted fiercely, Altatia didn't say a word. Her hovering body approached instantly, extended her hand, and placed it on the young lady's chest. "Essence? Don't make me laugh, witch. Do you think I'll be happy because of his pain? Without annoying people bothering you, without the restrictions of distance and position, you can touch and get close to him at any time. You don't need to hide your feelings and love anymore. Is this really a terrible situation for you?" With only the two of them in this environment, this was like a dream for Lillian, who was about to be separated from Luoya by thousands of miles under Emperor Lucas' orders. Even though she was in a difficult situation, how could she not be happy to be able to hug each other after so long? Altatia's words were like the whispers of a demon, ringing in the young lady's ears with some certainty. Getting rid of the women around him will hurt him. But it will be enough to make him indulge in love with them. Restricting his freedom will make him angry, but it will be enough to give him your body to do whatever he wants. Once you have a child with him, his hatred will be reduced. After all, being soft-hearted toward the people he cares about is his weakness. And his family is the most important thing to him. Hearing the witch's words, the black-haired young lady's purple pupils shrunk abruptly and her body trembled slightly. Some dark things in her heart expanded rapidly under Altatia's instigation. Looking at Lillian in this state, the witch revealed a delighted expression. She destroyed everything he had and gave everything she had to him. This kind of extreme love and hate coexisting is really contradictory and twisted to the point of intoxication. However, just as the sweetness amidst bitterness is the most blissful, the love amidst hatred must also be very delicious. Amidst the seductive whispers, Lillian finally couldn't hold it in and stopped her. She lifted her head and her eyes were filled with rage. Altatia was taken aback, but she wasn't surprised. I'll only say it once. It's his first time. The moment the witch's words entered Lillian's ears, the young lady's body trembled abruptly. She lifted her head in surprise and asked with a flushed face. At the very least, I have to confirm it. Just a while is good enough. Can it help him regain his senses? We don't have much time. Hurry up and say whatever you want. Although it was to awaken Luoya, the witch had indeed helped her this time. If the first time was out of interest, then what about the second time? Was it just a coincidence, or was there some other reason? Luoya. Do you like me? Don't sleep yet. I only have this question. No matter what, I hope you can answer me. The current Luoya only possessed his subconscious. It was obvious that he wasn't in his normal state. However, he had an advantage as well, which was that he couldn't lie. Everything that the young man said now would definitely be his true thoughts from the depths of his heart. This would also affect Lillian's decision. I like you. When this soft whisper entered her ears, the black-haired young lady trembled. Even her breathing seemed to stop as ripples appeared in her amethyst-like eyes. I like you too. No, I love you. Now, I have no more regrets. Amidst the soft whispers, the sound of clothes falling to the ground could be heard in the silent night. The two figures hugged each other as they panted heavily, unable to separate. Chapter 470. Luoya had a strange dream that could be described as full of twists and turns. Luoya's weak consciousness still had some residual memories of the terrifying abyss filled with darkness. It should be a scene that he saw not long ago. But in fact, Luoya knew nothing about it. His self-awareness and consciousness gradually faded as time passed. In contrast, as his consciousness weakened, chaotic screams and wails echoed in his head. Listening to the screams was an inhumane torture in itself. As the screams faded, Luoya's rationality became weaker as though he was about to fall into a coma. But shortly after, another feeling occupied his mind and cleared his mind. I see. Is it Senior? To the black-haired young man, Lillian's safety was the best news. But what Luoya didn't expect was that after the tremor in his bloodline, his consciousness actually became clearer. But even so, the young man still heard that sentence. When the words entered the young man's ears, even Luoya's sluggish thoughts stirred. As though asking a question, the black-haired young man's lips trembled slightly and he uttered a soft voice. Don't sleep yet. No matter what, I hope you can answer my question. It was a mixture of nervousness and slight fear. Her white teeth bit her red lips and her purple pupils trembled uneasily. It was a fragile appearance that didn't match the Lillian in Luoya's heart at all. It was as fragile as glass and as illusory as a bubble. Recalling Lillian's question, Luoya understood her emotions a little. Just like any ordinary person who asked this question, she was afraid of hearing a negative answer and was afraid of being rejected by the other party. This kind of worry was something that even Lillian, who was almost omnipotent in the young man's eyes, couldn't avoid. The black-haired young man thought and almost didn't hesitate at all. She was the senior sister who had been constantly helping Luoya since they met. She supported him unreservedly after they became blood relatives. It could even be said that she was the senior sister who doted on him. Although they hadn't known each other for a long time, the girl who was almost omnipotent and gentle to him had already left an indelible impression in Luoya's heart. For the youth, even if it was difficult for him to think, the answer to this question was clear. Gazing at the young lady who was trembling in excitement and fear, Luoya answered with all his might. But like the peaks and valleys of waves, this brief clarity of consciousness didn't last long. After answering, the young man sank into the sea of consciousness again. But before he entered the sea of consciousness, he saw Lillian's smile that was a mixture of surprise, joy, and relief. As his consciousness sank, Luoya's perception became hazy again. His surroundings fell into darkness, and the dream had completely entered its final stage. Their warm bodies embraced each other. Their blood vessels seemed to have gone berserk. Their familiar body fragrance, their long hair that occasionally slid across their chest and shoulders, as well as an unprecedented sense of comfort and release. What's going on? Wait, I remember being illuminated by that strange lamp, and then. That's right, my consciousness was pulled into a bottomless abyss, and then, I'm taking a bath now. Then, could the dream before be, splash? The youth frowned as his body hit the edge of the bathtub. Then, he looked at his own body in surprise. Gazing at his body under the water, Luoya couldn't help but fall into deep thought. However, this loud noise alarmed the person outside the bathroom. The white stone door suddenly opened, and a black-haired, purple-eyed young lady appeared. Senior sister. Seeing that the youth had woken up, Lillian placed her hand on her chest and spoke in a voice that was a mixture of joy and relief. However, Luoya couldn't respond at all because at this moment, the youth's mind was completely captivated by Lillian's body. So beautiful. Senior sister, no, it's nothing. It's just, why am I here? The young lady walked up to Luoya with slow steps. She exchanged information with him and softly told him everything that happened to Lillian that night. Just as Luoya expected, the first team quickly began to fight after discovering the enemy. They didn't intend to inform Luoya and the others. After all, in their opinion, the second team's combat strength was dispensable. However, in the end, it turned out that this was a bad move. During this process, Lillian had been fighting against the old man. During this period, the enemy also lit up the lamp, but unlike Luoya, the moment the lamp emitted light, the young lady sensed that something was wrong and activated 10 cities. The situation of the 2 transfer students from the country of knights is different from yours. They were directly wiped out, so I wasn't able to rescue them in time. I'm sorry for being late. Facing Lillian's apology, Luoya hurriedly refused and thanked her. Although the situation of Selena and the others worried Luoya, the youth didn't think that anything would happen to them, including Paul. Instead, it was Lillian who seemed to be overly guilty. Senior sister, we are now in the territory of 10 cities, right? I can understand that, but why are we in the bathroom? And the time isn't right, isn't it? Facing the youth's question, Her Royal Highness lowered her head slightly and remained silent. Seeing this, Luoya hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask. Before the black-haired youth spoke halfway, a slender, jade-like finger suddenly trembled and tapped Luoya's lips. The youth couldn't help but widen his eyes. Before the surprised Luoya, the black-haired, purple-eyed young lady finally lifted her head. Don't ask. The young lady said and lowered her eyes gently. Chapter 471. In the bathroom where only the sound of water dripping could be heard, the black-haired young man gazed at the beautiful young lady in front of him. His golden pupils contracted abruptly, and his brain went still as though it had shut down. But just like this rare occasion, there was always a reason for Lillian's shyness. It was either due to some embarrassing words or some overly intimate physical contact. But now, her body was trembling slightly, her face was flushed, and tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. And with this as a clue, some things became clear. Gazing at Lillian in front of him, Luoya's heartbeat accelerated rapidly. On the other side, the black-haired, purple-eyed young lady's body trembled more violently as time passed. After a few seconds of silence, Lillian stood up in a fluster. After saying that, the young lady fled from the bathroom, leaving Luoya soaking in the pool alone. The black-haired young man stared blankly at the closed door after Lillian left. A moment later, his face flushed red. Could it be that senior sister and I? But why? No, the reason isn't the main point. I have to confirm if it's the truth. Pei Tila. Do you have time? I do have something to ask you. That girl was by your side during that time, so we didn't keep in touch. This means that the job was handed over to the witch, so we don't know what happened exactly. Upon hearing Pei Tila's answer, Luoya revealed an inexplicable expression of disappointment. But he didn't expect the Earth Mother to suddenly change the topic. Blessings? After closing the door after stepping out of the bathroom, the black-haired, purple-eyed young lady thought. Her body suddenly lost all strength as she leaned against the door and sat down. She covered her cheeks with both hands, regretting her mistake. Although Luoya had gone astray during his childhood, Lillian and Luoya spent most of their time being respectful to each other. If their relationship was categorized, Luoya respected and loved Lillian, while Lillian doted on Luoya. It could be said that they were the standard sibling relationship. But after this intimate moment, their relationship had changed. Just like other young girls, Luoya would probably find it difficult to continue observing Lillian's situation from now on. The sense of distance that she had always maintained was likely to rapidly shorten. But Lillian was extremely conflicted about this. In order to avoid this, it was naturally better for Luoya not to know that the two of them had been together. In fact, after the ancient gods left, only the two of them were left in the room. As long as Lillian refused to admit it, there was nothing that Luoya could do. When the young man asked about the previous situation, Lillian, who had just become a woman, couldn't suppress her embarrassment and acted abnormally. Her overheated brain couldn't even come up with a lie. She could only forcefully stop the young man from asking and escape in a panic. Would he hate her for doing such a thing while she was unconscious? What if she was treated as a frivolous woman? And if she thought about it carefully, wouldn't that situation seem like a crime? Time passed bit by bit, but Lillian's overheated brain didn't cool down. After thinking about it carefully, Lillian still couldn't come up with a good idea. Then, the bathroom door opened again and the young man walked out fully dressed. Amidst the floating water vapor, golden and purple pupils collided, accompanied by the sound of their intense heartbeats. The young man and young lady looked at each other in silence. Just what exactly happened between Luoya and Lillian? After asking Pei Tila about it, the black-haired young man could basically confirm it. But because of this, a new question popped up in the young man's mind. Why didn't Lillian want to talk about it? Among the major countries, the Austin Empire and the theocracy were more conservative, while the scholar country and the loosely commercial United Nations were more open. And as the Austin Empire's princess, Lillian was even more conservative. Of course, part of this was due to her cold personality. But even when facing Luoya, before the bloodline connection between them was discovered, Lillian had never had any physical contact with him. In such a situation, it would be impossible for Lillian to personally talk about what happened last night. Luoya wasn't such a scoundrel as to take pleasure in such a thing. In fact, the young man didn't even want to ask about the specifics. Are you feeling better? Right, you're probably still a little tired. Rest a little more, or... I don't understand what you're saying. Could it be that senior sister doesn't actually have that kind of feeling for me, and it's just that she wants to wake me up in such a dangerous situation? Unlike usual, Lillian had a huge reaction to the black-haired young man's question. The black-haired, purple-eyed young lady lifted her head and agitatedly denied Luoya's guess. Under the young man's scheming, she had completely given up on her original plans. At this thought, the young lady took a few steps forward, held back the shyness in her heart, and held the young man's hand. Under Luoya's surprised gaze, she said, "Senior sister, I'm afraid that you'll have to be careful." Lillian lowered her gaze slightly and voiced her concerns. After hearing the young lady's reason, Luoya fell into silence. "I'm happy that you're worried about me. But as for the matters of the Empire, big sister wants to resolve them herself. Can you promise me that? Luoya, trust me. Under Lillian's firm words and incessant pleas, Luoya pondered for a long time. In the end, he nodded in agreement. Everyone was different. Lillian wasn't like Ai Lizzie, who was always by Luoya's side. She had her own faction and strength. Compared to relying on Luoya, being relied on by Luoya was more satisfying and blissful for her, just like how an older sister would take care of her younger brother. Senior sister. I like you. Looking at Her Royal Highness, who was right in front of him, the black-haired young man softly confessed. Then, he took a step forward and hugged Lillian in his arms. Why are you suddenly saying this? No, I heard your answer back then. Looking at the black-haired, purple-eyed young lady, Luoya quietly waited for her answer. Lillian couldn't help but recall her answer last night. A dazed expression appeared in her purple eyes. The same answer came out of the young lady's mouth again. However, this time, Luoya was no longer unconscious. The young man didn't say anything after hearing her answer. However, his breathing became much more rapid. After the two of them looked at each other for a while, they finally couldn't suppress the feelings in their hearts and kissed each other. After a long time, the two of them who were in each other's embrace collapsed on the chair. Their cheeks were stained with a layer of spring. However, while their lips parted and they were panting intensely, Lillian's face showed a troubled expression. Sensing the young lady's strange behavior, Luoya couldn't help but be surprised. He thought that he did something wrong that made his lover unhappy. However, in response to the young man's careful question, Lillian hesitated. No. Senior sister, what are you talking about? Here, because last night was too intense, so I can't. The moment he heard the black-haired, purple-eyed young lady's shy and timid words, Luoya's brain began to heat up rapidly like a rocket. His body also stiffened. However, looking at Luoya's reaction, Lillian seemed to have misunderstood something. She hurriedly explained, I understand. Senior sister, you don't have to say anything. As a man who possessed the physique of an extraordinary person and was blessed by the Earth Mother all year round, it was impossible to say that he didn't have such thoughts after tasting the forbidden fruit for the first time. However, when he saw the painful expression that occasionally flashed across Lillian's face, Luoya felt heartache from the bottom of his heart. Those slight desires also gradually faded away. For the first time, I don't want to use these. It's also the custom of the Austin Empire. As the princess of the Austin Empire, Lillian naturally knew the consequences of lacking protective measures. However, the reality of the situation didn't allow it. Originally, Lillian wanted to let the white-haired witch help clean up the mess after everything was over. However, as if she saw through Lillian's thoughts, Altacia didn't appear after that, which completely disrupted Lillian's plan. However, even this method had its limits. Just like irrigating a flower field, the water that went into the deepest part of the field could no longer be extracted. It was more of a psychological comfort. Senior sister. The young lady who was talking to herself shook her head. After thinking for a moment, she still didn't say such embarrassing things. Besides, in the end, Lillian felt that the possibility of falling into the trap in one go was too small. It wasn't worth emphasizing. If they were to get married and have children in the future, they would probably need a large number of curse vessels and potions as support. They would only be able to obtain the crystallization of their love after many attempts. It was almost impossible for this kind of first experience to blossom and bear fruit. If it was senior sister, she must have taken care of it. Can you accompany me to the bedroom? There are some, but that's not the reason. There's something I want you to see. Luoya, who suddenly realized something, didn't say anything else. He carried the young lady and walked to the next room. Lillian turned her head away with a shy expression. Soon after, the two entered the bedroom together. They looked at the messy bed in silence. After a long silence, Luoya said with a guilty expression. Lillian shook her head, recalled for a moment, and pointed to the corner of the bed. Hearing Lillian's words, Luoya took a deep breath and stepped forward. He followed the young lady's guidance and came to the bedside. The dim light in the room had a trace of blurriness. However, even so, the trace of blood was still so glaring that the young man's body trembled slightly. "Don't talk. I don't want any guarantee or oath. I just want you to at least take a look. Also, I want you to know one thing. I'm very happy now." In a sweet whisper, Lillian stretched out her hand and hugged the young man's body tightly. Chapter 472. What exactly was happiness? For the current Luoya, just by quietly looking at the girl sleeping soundly, happiness would continuously rise up from his heart. Lillian's beauty was a type of cold and noble beauty that was unique and different from the rest. Her coldness wasn't like Ai Lizi's indifference to others. Instead, it came from her temperament and innate coldness. Her nobility also wasn't like Xia Luo's unique nobility. Instead, it was a type of suppression that made others not dare to approach her. But only when she was asleep would her unique temperament be slightly restrained. This was a secret that only the few closest to Lillian knew. And this rare gentleness paired with the girl's current curled-up kitten-like posture was a special enjoyment that belonged solely to Luoya. Luoya found it difficult to suppress his emotions as he carried the girl and inspected their first scene. However, the black-haired, purple-eyed girl was already at her limits. Lillian had no experience at all. After a night of hard work and taking Luoya to take a bath, she was still fine when she was panicking. But after she calmed down, the pain and exhaustion in her body were completely unbearable. Isn't it because you're too? Forget about it. Luoya's plan to peek at Lillian's sleeping face began during this period of time and continued to this day. Of course, part of the reason was that Lillian's face was so beautiful that no one would ever get tired of looking at her. But, more than that, it was because Luoya was astonished and amazed. Lillian was intelligent, powerful, and managed her own faction by herself. She didn't need Luoya's help at all. Luoya even subconsciously paid attention to his manners in front of Lillian and didn't dare to act rashly. Occasionally, the black-haired boy would have a vague worry. He felt that if his power surpassed Lillian's in the future, perhaps the love and care he received from Lillian would disappear, and their relationship would gradually weaken. After all, for someone who loved her younger brother, when her younger brother didn't need her care anymore, her younger brother's personality would automatically disappear. The strong love in his heart couldn't be quelled, and Luoya didn't dare to disturb the sleeping girl. Helpless, the black-haired boy could only accompany her to sleep while observing the entire room. 10 cities, this source substance of the Aikman's kingdom, seemed to have undergone a qualitative change after Lillian leveled up to Origin Grade 2. Now, not only could the girl protect herself with the city, she could even freely use the rooms in the 10 cities, whether it was this bedroom or the bathroom. It's getting more and more ridiculous. In the ancient times, the 10 cities gathered the wisdom and hope of mankind. The power of the curse item in the 10 cities was far beyond people's imagination. If Luoya guessed correctly, no one in the history of Aikman should have truly controlled these ultimate weapons. After all, if they did, with the nature of the Austin Empire, they would have gone to war long ago. Feeling the great potential of the girl, Luoya couldn't help but sigh slightly. Once again, he experienced Lillian's extraordinary talent. However, the boy didn't have any jealousy about it. For the girl who was about to go to the front line, every increase in strength represented an increase in safety. From this perspective, Luoya couldn't wait for Lillian to level up to Origin Grade 1. Thinking of the fallen people wandering in the foggy town at this time, Luoya's expression couldn't help but become serious. His golden pupils were particularly dignified, and it lasted for a long time before slowly calming down. Overall, Lillian didn't sleep for long. For the matter of Lillian waking up from her sleep so quickly, Luoya initially thought it was because the two of them were in a bad environment. After all, there might be enemies outside the 10 cities. But before the boy could say anything to comfort her, he saw the sweet smile on the girl's face. Chapter 473. To the current Luoya, what was the most intolerable thing? Hitting me, you can. Hitting my wife, you can't. Hitting me, you can't. Hitting my wife, you can't. I'm happy that you want to avenge me, but strictly speaking, I should be the one protecting you, right? This is the Academy's rule. The black-haired young man recalled the battle with the collector, and a look of self-blame appeared on his face. Seeing Luoya like this, Lillian pondered for a moment, held the young man's hand, and spoke softly. Indeed. He remembered it in 1 second. By the way, I don't know why that fallen one didn't use the spell that makes people disappear on me. I don't know why, It didn't work. Lillian recounted her experience in the battle. Luoya knitted his brows slightly, held his chin, and pondered carefully. He was rather puzzled about this matter. I'm only responsible for opening a dungeon for you. If you die in there, it's your own fault. You can't blame it on me. But in terms of defense and immunity to certain curses, the king's blood didn't add any attribute resistance or physical resistance. The only benefit Luoya had in this aspect was that the fallen one's murmurs couldn't affect him. But that was also due to the crown's source substance, and it didn't have much to do with the bloodline. After pondering for a long time, the two of them couldn't figure out why the bloodline was immune to the enemy's curses. Seeing this situation, Luoya decided not to think about it anymore. Lillian nodded and chose to put this question aside for the time being. Recalling the lantern in the hands of the zombie-like old man, Lillian couldn't help but frown slightly, and her expression turned solemn. Even though the 10 cities blocked the effects of the lantern in the previous battle, it could only be used for defense, and they still needed to consider other methods to defeat the enemy. But in this regard, Luoya seemed to have some ideas. The young man took on the task. After some discussion, the two of them finally came up with a battle plan and began the final adjustments and preparations. After the passage of countless years and the fall of the savior, his spirit must have been exhausted and his body decayed. But as the saying goes, a centipede dies but never falls down, not to mention that he had obtained a divine artifact like the Eye of Portus. After some preparations, the two looked at each other. After Luoya nodded, the black-haired, purple-eyed girl's body emitted a faint light. The domain of 10 cities was lifted, and the luxurious room disappeared like a dream, revealing the old room that belonged to the abandoned town. The black-haired young man looked out of the window and walked out of the room. Lillian followed closely behind, and the two figures gradually disappeared into the white fog. Marin Town, an abandoned town at the border of the Austin Empire, looked the same as before. Dilapidated houses were connected together, some of which had already collapsed. Weeds and moss could be seen everywhere, and the air was humid. It was difficult to distinguish these figures in the white fog, but upon closer inspection, they were not the members of the investigation team, nor were they the residents of the town. Instead, they were strange humanoid figures that burned like fireworks. Those are the people who were punished by the Savior. Strictly speaking, they should be the souls of the sinners who were burned by the eye of the sun god before the Eye of Portus fell into a demonic artifact. They will become the guardians of the lantern and fight for it. The black-haired young man couldn't help but frown as he stared at the faintly glowing sinners in the mist. Judging from the reaction of the curse power, the strength of these sinners was different. It should be determined by the sinners' original strength. However, judging from their identical flaming bodies, these sinners should be able to sense each other. At the end of the fog, the black-haired, purple-eyed girl's body began to shine with the radiance of the curse power. The kingdom, source substance burst into a dazzling light under the impact of the curse power. Warhorses neighed, and at the same time, flags fluttered in the wind. The strength of the Blue Knights, who had left an important page in history, gradually recovered to its original state. At the same time, they had far surpassed the current royal knights of the Austin Empire. Under the attack of these heroic spirits from the previous era, the flame spirits on the road were quickly wiped out. Just like how the owners of these souls were different when they were alive, the forms of the monsters that gathered in the fog were also different. There were dwarves and elves in myths and legends, tall giants, ferocious monsters, sinners of various races, and there were even figures of dragons flashing across the sky. Surrounded by this group of enemies, even a warrior who had experienced hundreds of battles couldn't help but feel nervous. But looking at the endless stream of enemies, the black-haired, purple-eyed girl's expression didn't change at all. Looking at the direction Luoya left, Lillian remained silent. In front of a girl who was worried about her lover, the roar of a dragon was no more than the chirping of a bird in her ears. Under the girl's arrogant attitude, the calamity of destruction came in an instant. But the black-haired, purple-eyed girl still didn't react. Facing these chilling attacks, Lillian, who was in the shadows, only uttered a single word. The soft murmur dissipated in the fog, and what followed was an explosion of intense light. Under the full power of the kingdom, source substance, the sturdy city that belonged to human history rose from the ground. The tall city shone brightly, and the curses and arrows turned into ashes under the 10 cities defense. The giants had no choice but to withdraw their attacks. Woo! Behind them, the red-robed spellcasters of the Magician Legion chanted group curses in unison. Under the city, the angry roars of the warriors and the strange roars of various races intertwined. A battle comparable to that of myths and epics appeared in the real world. The scale of the flame spirits summoned by the Eyes of Portus was beyond imagination. But if it were Lillian, Luoya believed that she could turn these dead sinners into dust. And now that the young lady's mission was basically completed, it was time for Luoya to deal with the real culprit. Lillian's strength was more dominant, and the endless stream of elite troops under her were daunting. The strength of the warriors also grew along with the young lady's level. Coupled with the defensive power of the 10 cities, she could effortlessly defeat opponents weaker or on par with her. But against powerful enemies, she would need to expend a lot of energy in a battle of attrition. Therefore, Luoya and Lillian adopted a clear division of labor and divided the enemy's strength into two. As lovers who were connected by blood, both of them trusted each other without reservation. In a battle of life and death, there was no need to care about the means. This was Luoya's principle all along, and it was even more so for the fallen. With the cover of the buildings and the witches' curses, Luoya shortened the charging distance bit by bit. When both sides were less than 100 meters apart, the Grand Priest of the Savior from thousands of years ago turned his rotten gaze to the black-haired young man for the first time. Among all the members of the investigation team, Luoya was the only one who could make the Grand Priest's emotions fluctuate. The ancient Grand Priest hated this young man who was filled with the aura of the Mother Goddess. This was something that was engraved in his mind thousands of years ago. Therefore, the moment he saw Luoya approaching, he reflexively raised the sacred weapon in his hand. When the skinny arm picked up the lantern that once brought peace and tranquility to the world, a malicious smile appeared on the old man's face. He didn't hide his ridicule of Luoya's stupidity. After all, in his opinion, no matter how fast the young man was, he couldn't be compared to the light shining from the lantern. But what surprised him was that at this moment, the black-haired young man's face wasn't filled with despair, but a similar mocking smile. The Grand Priest was slightly taken aback when he saw that Luoya's expression wasn't right. He seemed to have realized something, but it was all too late. The intense light once again shot out from the ancient lantern, illuminating the world like the sun. But this time, the tempting golden light didn't shine on Luoya. Instead, it returned to where it came from. Boom! With a series of traps, the black-haired young man had significantly closed the distance between him and the black-robed priest. The effect of the Eyes of Portus was even stronger at close range. Even though most of the light was reflected back, the remaining light still caused the young man's brain to tingle. But just when Luoya's consciousness began to blur, a blood-red light suddenly burst out from his body. Wrapped in the blood-red light, the body of the Gulan Daer, as a god, ignored the light as if it was nothing. His furious fist rapidly descended, and in the blink of an eye, it was already in front of the enemy. Boom! The power of the Savior was incompatible with the power of the Mother Goddess. Because of this, Luoya was hated by the black-robed priest. But now, Luoya's power had become a means to suppress the enemy. After sealing this terrifying magic weapon, Luoya's movements were no longer restricted. The black-robed priest's most effective means of attack had also completely disappeared. The situation of offense and defense could be said to have been completely reversed. But even so, the black-haired young man still didn't let his guard down. "Luoya, it doesn't feel right." When he heard the words of the giant skeleton, Luoya wasn't too surprised. His golden pupils suddenly shrank, and then his figure flew forward. While walking, the black-haired young man also noticed that something was wrong. After taking a direct hit from the Gulan Daer, even Raiden, who was known for his strong body, couldn't come out unscathed. But the black-robed old man who was about to die didn't have the smell of blood that would inevitably emit from a wound. This was obviously a problem. After discovering this, Luoya's face became more serious, and he further quickened his pace. "Why isn't there a smell of blood nearby?" Looking at the broken body of the Treant priest in front of him that sprouted wooden buds and took root in the soil, the black-haired young man finally understood the true body of the enemy. But just as Luoya was about to give the final blow, a strange scene caught the young man's attention, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes. It was a beating heart buried deep in the crown of the tree. Chapter 474. In the depths of the fog, Luoya Akot was speechless as he looked at the black-robed priest kneeling on the ground. After seeing the current state of the savior priest, one question after another was answered in the young man's heart. Why was this guy neither human nor ghost? Why was he able to survive for so many years? All of these questions were answered. Before the savior fell, one of his divinities was the sun god. This didn't matter to other races, but for the Ents who relied on the sun to survive, it was natural for them to follow the savior since they relied on the sun to survive. The enemy's true form was unexpected, but it didn't cause Luoya's emotions to fluctuate too much. What really surprised the youth wasn't this discovery, but in the center of the constantly expanding tree, there was something that didn't fit in with the surrounding branches. From the size and shape, it was probably a human heart. A strange roar similar to a scream came from the old man who had transformed into a giant tree. Countless branches intertwined with each other, causing the branches of the Ent to become thicker and stronger. The enemy was constantly recovering, which was very unfavorable for Luoya, but the black-haired youth was indifferent to it. It was an unspeakable sixth sense, as if there was a line in his body that was connected to the strange heart. When he felt this feeling, Luoya thought that he was under some kind of curse, but it turned out that there was nothing wrong with the youth's body, and the strange heart was quickly covered up by the enemy. So that's how it is, you can pretend to be a human because of that heart. It was common knowledge that the Ents were difficult to move and had a tall stature, but in the mountains of Akot territory, the Ents who were once members of the Twilight Sage Association once said that in ancient times, some fallen Ents could use some kind of special curse to walk freely in the world. That was the origin of this heart. This wasn't a guess without evidence, but a reality after various clues were sorted out. That ability was born from the king's blood, and belonged to the residual ability of a god who signed a contract with the awakened king's blood. Thinking of this, Luoya's expression became heavy. The strange feeling from the tree in front of him was constantly tugging at his heartstrings, making him more and more certain of his thoughts, and causing him to become extremely angry. Luoya could accept the death of his ancestors in battle, but he couldn't stand the humiliation of their corpses. Thinking of the desecration of his ancestors who had been protecting the human race all their lives, the rage in his body could not be suppressed. In front of Luoya, the huge Treant roared again. This time, its voice was filled with madness and murderous intent. After returning to its original form, the Treant priest was finally able to display its strength. Layers of light shrouded the body of this huge monster, and everything around it changed dramatically. A dry, strong wind blew against Luoya's face, causing his long black hair to flutter backward. In the haze, the youth seemed to see the phantom of the Grim Reaper in this gust of wind. But what was unexpected was that in the face of this strong aura of death, the black-haired youth didn't dodge. He just stood there, calmly looking at the filthy fallen one, like a sword inserted into the ground, or like a spectator waiting for the knell to ring. Boom! Chapter 475. The heart had always been a magical organ in the human body. In Luo Ye's previous life, there were cases in the world where the recovered patients saw the original owner of the heart in their dreams after the heart transplant surgery. There were also many patients whose living habits changed to the original owners after the heart transplant surgery. In Xia, the heart was considered to be one of the organs that stored the soul. It was also the organ with the highest degree of mutation for transcended and mythical creatures. Therefore, it was often used as a curse vessel material in ancient times. In fact, the demon's heart was also one of the best curse vessel materials. Looking at the heart emitting light under the curse power in front of him, Luo Ye's expression was slightly heavy. He sorted out his thoughts and slowly told the black-haired girl with purple pupils next to him about the new information he collected, which was the ancient god's curse used by the ancestors of the ALD family. I see, that's great. Lillian put her hand on her chest and felt a little relieved, but then she raised her head with some doubts, looked at Luo Ye, and asked for specific information. 1 second. Remember, the black-haired girl with purple pupils said so with a puzzled expression. Although the space curse was an absolutely rare skill in Xia, due to the stability of Xia's world, there were huge restrictions in itself. One of them was that the traces could not be erased. In the face of the rules of this world, even the gods should be helpless, but the reality was not the case. Putting Lillian's side aside, Luo Ye's team had neither the enemy nor the traces of space distortion at that time. This was obviously not in line with the rules set by Xia. Time. Paul Ackerman was the only survivor of the enemy. But unlike the others, Paul turned into an old man. This situation can be said to be like a crane in a flock of chickens. But after understanding the composition of the curse, Rojas suddenly realized something. Jump and Grant. The black-haired boy realized that Xia, who did not have the concept of a fertilized egg, could not describe this specific situation. He could only look at Lillian's abdomen and pointed back and forth between the two. The black-haired girl with purple pupils was stunned for a moment, then her cheeks immediately blushed. In the beginning, you mean before they grow up, right? Upon hearing Lillian's words, Luo Ye hastily coughed and brought the topic back on track. The black-haired young man shook his head slightly, obviously not optimistic about the effect of this skill. It was useless against powerful enemies and could only be used to delay weaker enemies. Unless there were too many enemies, this skill was useless. But in response to Luo Ye's opinion, Lillian shook her head with a bitter smile and refuted. The black-haired, purple-eyed girl said. She was a little helpless about Luo Ye's lack of common sense. The boy couldn't help but be slightly stunned when he heard this. After thinking carefully, he remembered that the source of the curse techniques he had been exposed to all this time was indeed somewhat problematic. I've already understood the theory behind the curse, but the way to dispel it is. Chapter 476. The Ald clan was a clan that was buried deep in history. As the shadow eagle that united the human empire in the Second Era, not to mention the records of this clan, even their existence was not known to anyone. Because of this, Luo Ye had always known very little about the enemies of his ancestors. However, the young man never expected that this time, Luo Ye accidentally learned some information buried deep in history through this heart. According to the family meeting in the second memory, the Ald family, or the human world they protected, should have encountered some trouble, and there was more than one trouble. The result was that they were divided into multiple battles. Veronica stayed in the family because she was pregnant and gave birth to a child. As a result, she was attacked by the enemy and finally died to protect her people. For a family, anything could be obtained quickly. Wealth, territory, and army were not impossible to have these in a short period of time. It was even more so for the Ald family. However, the only thing that couldn't be obtained was the population. Thinking of this, the black-haired young man secretly sighed. Through the memory of a family member, Luoya speculated that this could be said to be the limit. However, what he didn't expect was that after the 3 memories came to an end, there was an unexpected gain. Originally, as a curse vessel, Veronica's heart couldn't have the function of recording the user's memory. However, this curse using Veronica's heart as a component was very special. For this reason, it needed to be kept alive and buried in the trance body. 1 second memory for Luoya, it was different from the previous memory. He could clearly see and hear the nearby situation, but there was no logic at all. The chaotic memory revealed a crazy aura. Many things he saw made him shudder. There was no logic and no order, but the content that occasionally flashed was shocking. Even so, Luoya still endured and read it. He tried his best to collect information. In this case, the weak treant raised a different opinion and chose to embark on the migration journey alone. After more than 10 years of hard work, it finally walked out of the mountains surrounded by clouds. When it appeared under the sun without fog for the first time, the curse power in the treant began to become active, making it grow rapidly. So far, the trance memory was an inspirational story. In Luoya's view, it was similar to the boy who went out to work in spite of his parents' opposition. Unfortunately, all the good things ended here. Under the illumination of the light, the entire city began to descend into chaos and madness. The priests began to fight for the divine artifact, and the people in the city who had fallen into madness also began to kill each other. The streets were filled with layers of corpses of various races. Amid the screams, flames lit up everywhere. During this period, a large number of warriors from various races began to search for and destroy the artifact that was transformed from the eye of the savior. However, they did not find any trace of the treant. The fallen treant priest took the Eye of Portus and began to live a hidden life. It was not until many years later that the believers of the savior found it. With this as the foundation, the treant priest who held the artifact became one of the leaders of the fallen and participated in the attack on the Arde family. Veronica's heart was obtained at that time. After that, the treant priest fought with the Arde family several times. Although he was injured, he did not die. In a dim room with almost no light source, the fallen treant hid in the darkness. In front of the trance vision, there was a man with a blurry face. The moment Luoya saw the man, he could not help but feel emotional because this man was the collector that he once fought with. I've finally gathered all of it. As long as I get that part, the damn seal of the Arde family can no longer stop me. Hee, Orchid, don't be excited. I don't lack your heart. What I lack is the other parts. It doesn't matter. The bloodline of that family still exists. We still have a chance. Yes, this was the most valuable thing that Luoya found in the fragmented memory of the fallen treant while enduring the torture. Although it was only a scene and a few short sentences, the amount of information contained shocked the black-haired young man. Although Xia also had the tradition of collecting the enemy's bones to show her strength in the past, it obviously did not include the internal organs. The collector himself had already stated his purpose. It was the so-called seal of the Arde family. The treant priest's name was Orchid. After hearing the collector's words, he was so excited that he wanted to give away the heart of Veronica. As a curse vessel that had been used to transform into a human for a long time and could suppress the madness of the treants, this heart was obviously not something that the treant could easily give away. In fact, during the battle with Luoya, he had been protecting this heart. With the solution of this puzzle, whether it was the Arde family or the Akkad family, the reason why the believers of the Savior targeted them for a long time was clear. Because of the attacks of various races and the existence of the seal, the fallen had never been able to awaken the Savior. However, in the late Second Era, the Savior's temporary awakening created an opportunity for his believers. But when the believers wanted to awaken him completely, they found that except for the awakened bloodline of the Arde family, no one could enter the enchantment of hibernation. I'm afraid that this is the last piece of the puzzle that is mixed with blood and hatred. In other words, the collector will definitely launch another attack on us in the next period of time. Whether it's Senior or I, We must not lose. An invisible pressure shrouded the two of them. Even Lillian, who had always been calm, frowned. In the past, the two of them only hated cults, but now, they were in a state where they would not rest until the fallen were dead. The black-haired girl with purple eyes looked at Luoya, who was thinking about something, for a long time. She frowned as she recalled the young man's words. Lillian knew these things, so how could Luoya, who was quick-witted, not think of it? Then why did he say that to induce the girl to adopt defensive tactics? Just that we can't lose. I can do that. After all, the performance of the 10 cities is excellent in terms of defense, but I can't let my beloved fight while I'm in a safe place. You should know best what I'm talking about, right? You want me to live a safe life under heavy protection while you solve the source of the problem alone. That's what you're thinking, right? You're telling me this because you're worried that I'll be careless. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll go after that man without a word. Luoya, who knew that he had been seen through by Lillian, averted his eyes awkwardly. The black-haired girl with purple eyes sighed slightly and revealed a slight disappointment on her face. No, Senior, I don't think that way. I just think that this matter is too dangerous. Even the powerful Ald family couldn't defeat the fallen. Putting my own safety aside, if anything happens to you, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. The black-haired young man deliberated for a moment before speaking his reason. Lillian's sad expression slowly faded. She thought for a while and stepped forward to hug the young man. I'm glad that you're thinking for me from my perspective. But just like you said, this matter is very dangerous. If anything happens to you, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. If anything happens to you, I'm afraid I'll never be able to forgive myself. I'll live in sorrow and regret every day. What's the point of living in such a life that's worse than death? Besides, even if I'm not a member of the Akot family, this matter is closely related to me. The black-haired girl with purple eyes said so solemnly. Luoya was puzzled for a moment and couldn't help but ask questions. Lillian blushed slightly and said softly. Although it won't be possible in the next few years, T will have a baby sooner or later. I'm the baby's mother. How can I let others target his life? If it was about her, even if the other party had murderous intentions, Lillian wouldn't feel anything and would just kill the other party calmly. But this time, when it came to the possibility of her future with Luoya being targeted, the young girl's heart fluctuated and even felt a little angry. But, a baby? Although it's a beautiful dream, but it'll probably be a long time in the future. The young man with such thoughts sighed at the distant future and reached out to hug the young girl in his arms. However, Luoya didn't know that everything had already been settled. Chapter 477. After the war, Luoya held the black-haired, purple-eyed girl in his arms as he thought about their future. The mother of his future child was indeed an invincible identity. Luoya had no way to defend himself. He could only let Lillian join in the attack. However, since it was an active attack, he must have a strategy instead of running around aimlessly like a headless fly. Thinking about the various scenes he saw in Veronica's place, Luoya silently summarized the information he received. After defeating the King Selector clan, they failed to awaken the Savior immediately, which allowed the Aikman to discover the danger of the fallen. At the end of the Second Era, the entire ancient Austin Empire was besieged. This could be said to be the biggest failure of the fallen. As a result, the descendants of the Arde family managed to survive through the most difficult period at the end of the Second Era. By the time the Savior fell into a deep slumber in the Third Era, the forces of the fallen were exhausted in the process of migrating to the west. The Akot family, who had received the protection of the theocracy, quickly became powerful, and the Twilight Sage society was rebuilt. The situation was reversed once again. The invasion of the mutants this time is the precursor to the awakening of the Savior. This is the best time for them. The reason they have always had the upper hand was because they planned everything in the dark. But now, they can't wait to stand in front of the stage, and this is the result. If 1,000 years ago, the Arde family was taken advantage of because they were too arrogant, then now, the believers of the Savior were full of arrogance. In their eyes, no matter how powerful the Akkad family was, they could not be compared to the Arde family of the past. But the problem was, although they were weak, it did not mean that they were stronger. Of course, the other main reason why things went so smoothly was because of Lillian. Strictly speaking, this Treant priest named Orchid was fighting against two people at once. But even if it was a one-on-one battle, Luoya believed that he would be the final victor in the battle. Although Veronica did not have many memories, from the buildings and banquets in her memories, she could tell that the Auld family did not live a life far away from the mundane world, nor did they live in seclusion. Instead, they lived a life of wealth and privilege. Perhaps they had some other identity on the surface. But no matter what, this meant that they were within the sphere of power of the ancient Austinian Empire. In a situation where almost all of the elites were sent away, the Auld family should have known that the main family was empty. So why did the ancestors still make such a decision? Lillian believed that the biggest possibility was that the ancient Austin Empire would guarantee her safety at such a time. In addition, Estrid had complained about the Ackman tribe in the previous historical fragment, and some bad guesses began to form in the girl's mind. Although the Royal Selector clan had always been hidden in the dark, their power was no longer limited to their clansmen with the rise of the Twilight Sage Association. Coupled with their own strength, it was normal for the Emperor to be afraid of them. At this thought, Lillian clenched her fists and puckered her brows at the stupidity of the Ackman ancestors. Luoya couldn't help but ask. Nothing. I just feel a little uncomfortable thinking about the Ackman tribe. If Lillian could figure out the Ackman tribe situation, how could Luoya, who witnessed the battle in Veronica's memory, not think of this possibility? So, would the young man mind? Lillian remained silent while gazing at the black-haired young man who revealed a dubious expression. Luoya pondered for a few moments before waiting quietly by the side. After a long while, the black-haired, purple-eyed young lady finally spoke with some difficulty. Yes, I can more or less tell. In that battle, the reinforcements from the outside world didn't arrive. This was undoubtedly abnormal. Judging from the surrounding buildings, the Auld family should have been living in the royal city, which was the core of the ancient Austin Empire. No matter how powerful the believers of the Savior were, it was impossible for them to launch an attack without alerting the royal family. The young man couldn't help but let out a sigh as he recalled Estrid's words. The Ackman tribe was indecisive. This comment was very appropriate. But, this had nothing to do with Lillian now. Understanding Lillian's worries, Roja looked at the girl beside him and asked. Lillian lowered her head slightly with a heavy expression on her face. So what? Senior will always be senior. Besides, you asked me this question before, right? The black-haired young lady raised her eyebrows slightly and recalled Luoya's expression after seeing the memories in her heart. Ancestor Estrid said that Ancestor Caroline of the Akkad family had cooperated with the Ackman tribe at the end of the Second Era. No matter if they cooperated with the Akkad family out of guilt for what they had done in the past or purely for self-protection, the grudges of the Second Era were considered settled by Ancestor Caroline. Luoya. Indeed. It's not like me to worry about personal gains and losses. I always feel that you're better at sweet-talking than before. No. I like it. After resolving the knot in Lillian's heart about the Ackman tribe, the black-haired young man and young lady held hands and strolled around the ordinary streets that had not turned into a battlefield. It wasn't that the two of them didn't do anything, but after careful calculation, Luoya realized that they didn't need to do anything. After a series of battles and exchanges with Lillian, it was now close to noon. Luoya took the heart of Veronica and looked for traces to remove the curse one by one. He estimated that he might not even be able to complete half of it by night. Instead of wasting his energy, he might as well just wait. After this journey, Lillian would meet up with the troops and follow the Austin Empire's marching route directly to the front lines, while Luoya would return to St. Freya Academy to continue investigating the traces of the 6 disasters. While increasing his strength, through the members of Rosette Dawn, he would use the forces of various countries to search for the fallen, led by the Collector. But no matter what, this abandoned town in the mountains would be the last stop before the two of them parted. There was no doubt about this, and the two of them treasured this last time alone and didn't want to be disturbed by others. As for the Eyes of Portus, Luoya used the power of the Touch of Frozen Earth to completely freeze it and handed it over to the Witch Queen who was most familiar with curses to look after. First of all, this was Luoya's spoils of war, and according to the rules of St. Freya Academy, he didn't have to hand it over. Second, even if he handed it over, the Academy wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Lastly, and also the thing that worried Luoya the most, was that St. Freya Academy had too many people, and the scholars were the representatives of strange ideas. Maybe someone would do something that would cause a big accident. After the thick white fog dispersed, the border of the Austin Empire revealed its unique scenery. Under the noon sun, a brilliant rainbow streaked across the sky full of water vapor, making the two who saw this beautiful scenery feel a lot better. At the same time, they also felt a lot of emotions. I'm sorry, Senior. As a place with unique commemorative meaning, this place is a little shabby. The black-haired, purple-eyed girl blushed as she said this. She already had the intention to keep this bedroom as a permanent memory. On the other hand, Luoya remembered that the girl mentioned the problem of children. Yes, she did say that. The enhanced version of the king's blood? It feels a little scary. I can't imagine how strong it will be. Looking at the young man beside her, Lillian pondered for a moment and said so. She lowered her head, placed her hand on her lower abdomen, and whispered softly. So beautiful. Previously, Luoya had thought that if he was born with Lillian in the Akot family, he might be spoiled by this elder sister who doted on him. But fortunately, that situation didn't happen. But now, Luoya felt that his child had a chance to experience such a big gift. The black-haired young man said and discussed the issue of bloodlines and source substances with Lillian. Then, they chatted about many other topics. Looking at this situation, Luoya and Lillian looked at each other and slowly separated with some regret. Then, they searched for a group of recovered members together. On the other hand, due to the panicked appearance before they disappeared, everyone was making loud noises. The entire town was filled with ghostly screams, and after hearing the noises, most of the people were found. But what made Luoya a little speechless was that many of these high-level scholars were so frightened that they even attacked him. Are they crazy? Is that so? Witnessing the situation of the first group, the black-haired young man naturally thought of his second group and couldn't help but feel a little nervous. If he remembered correctly, Juliana and Selena should have also been shown by the lantern. The worried young man waited silently until it was late into the night. Two familiar curses appeared at the edge of the town and were immediately found by Luoya. Big Brother Luoya. Luoya, who discovered this, was startled. He hurriedly checked the condition of the two and found that it seemed to be a natural reaction after the mental shock. Similarly, after being shown by the Eye of Portus, some of the high-level transcendents in the first group went crazy, but the two members of Rosette Dawn were fine. Looking at this scene, Luoya couldn't help but sigh at the importance of willpower and was completely relieved. And as all the members were found, the time to leave was about to arrive. Chapter 478. At night, looking at the two sleeping girls on the ground, Luoya put his hand on his chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Although Luoya was the most powerful among them, his combat style leaned toward the traditional cursemancer. Except for the Gulan Daer, Pei Tila and Altatia's skills were long-range release. Judging from the attributes of the cursemancer himself, Luoya was indeed not good at close combat. It was precisely because of this that Selena and Juliana took such actions after discovering the enemy. They wanted to restrain the enemy and buy time for Luoya. However, the final result was that the enemy's curse vessel launched first. Luoya did not expect this situation, and it also put the three of them in danger. If they were really affected by the savior, they would never show such an expression. It was better to say that it was impossible for them to fall asleep at all. Instead, they would shout crazily or hide in the corner, curl up their bodies, and mutter something with a collapsed expression. It was obvious that these people did not want their san value to drop to zero. It was a result of the Savior's influence, so they were not considered cultists. At most, they were pitiful people who had been harmed. However, due to the strength of high-level transcendence, these people could be very destructive when they went crazy, and they could not be dealt with like ordinary victims. President, there is no problem with Selena's curse. They should be asleep. Because of his concern, Luoya deliberately asked the old Chinese medicine doctor, Stuart, who had just been rescued, to check their pulses. The young man with many magic eyes glanced at the two, and he did not see any abnormalities in the flow of the girl's curse power. Luoya, who heard this, was finally completely relieved. In this night of bad news one after another, this was the only thing that could make Luoya feel gratified. After picking up the two in each hand, Luoya took them directly to Lillian. On the other hand, after Paul recovered, he went to report his safety to Lillian. After all, Paul was also a member of the Archmen tribe, and he couldn't just ignore her. And now, as the only channel of communication between Lillian and Luoya, Paul's role became more and more prominent, and the number of times he ran between them increased. Paul, the original member of Team 1, went to report. Luoya and Stuart, the two members of Team 2, seized the time to start their mission. As a support group, Luoya and others brought a lot of potions and curse vessels. When Team 1 was crazy, and the rest were still in shock, Luoya and others couldn't do nothing. Such thoughts naturally appeared in his mind, but reality proved that everything was futile. Ah! After being busy for a while, Luoya and Stuart walked out of the room. They leaned against the wall and sighed. I just took a look with my eyes. The flow of the curse power in the crazy people's bodies is very chaotic. I'm afraid it can't be changed by external forces. What should we do, leader? Facing Stuart's question, Luoya held his forehead and pondered for a long time before shaking his head, announcing the failure of the rescue operation. The young man, who was at his wit's end, could only give such an answer. At the same time, he felt helpless about this unexpected situation. The students resisted bravely, and the teachers were scared out of their wits. In the end, the students were fine, but the teachers went crazy. The black-haired young man frowned at the awkward situation the investigation team had fallen into. In any case, in the case where most of the scholars had gone crazy, this mission had to be terminated. Besides, after the appearance of the Treant sacrifice, this investigation itself could be confirmed to be a scam. As for the future plans. Chapter 479. Parting. This was a word that Luoya Akkad wasn't unfamiliar with. Luoya had experienced parting with Kadia repeatedly since he was a child, so he should be more resistant to such scenes. But this time, the parting with Lillian left him feeling a little uncomfortable, especially when he recalled the blurry memories when he was unconscious. As the first young lady to have intimate contact with Luoya, it would be a lie to say that the young man didn't feel anything special. As a man, his sense of responsibility and desire to protect made him unwilling to part with Lillian. But his rationality drove him to act according to his previous plan. After the young lady's many manipulations, the relationship between Luoya and Lillian was more or less cleared up. Emperor Luoya wouldn't be able to find any clues anymore. And after agreeing to hand Lillian over, no matter what the Austin Empire's attitude was, Luoya wouldn't take the initiative to stir up trouble again. Starting from the border of the Austin Empire, Luoya toured the towns along the way, heading toward the heart of the largest human country in Xia. He avoided the route between the country of scholars and the border of the Austin Empire. Not only did the meticulous young man avoid the route, but he also changed his appearance. He changed his attire to that of a merchant's employee, which could be said to be quite common in summer. Remember. Don't ask. Jinkala is enough. The fertilizer is mixed with Jinkala. 1 bag is worth 2 bags. What are the benefits of Jinkala? I'll give it to whoever gets it right. Recalling the funny things of the past, the black-haired young man shook his head and continued on his way. This year, the Austin Empire was considered to have good weather, so the curse fertilizer was selling well. In autumn, the convoys of various merchants' fleets would be out in full force to resell food and daily necessities between the towns and villages. Of course, during this relaxing time, Luoya wasn't just having fun. In fact, the young man had been paying attention to whether there were any pursuers behind him, as well as guarding against possible enemies. But what disappointed the young man was that the enemies didn't take the bait easily. As a matter of fact, apart from a few fools who saw him alone and tried to rob him, Luoya didn't encounter any accidents along the way. As the saying went, one had to complete the act. This time, Luoya followed Lillian's tail. Not only did he unify the caliber of the team, but he also adopted some strategies for external affairs. The timing of this team's departure was roughly the same as Lillian's. If there was a difference in timing, the first party to arrive at the edge of the misty forest would be waiting in the forest's cabin. Both sides had agreed upon it. But due to the attack of the Treant priest, Lillian's mission completed too. That was why Luoya was the one waiting. How is it? S's is. SSSTS. T-Tess right. In the agreed-upon wooden cabin, Jellic gazed at the black-haired young man and asked carefully. Upon looking at his expression, Luoya couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. Minister, you've underestimated the impact of this incident. The St. Freya Academy's team was attacked by the cultists. This is huge news. Not to mention the mission, even the graduates have probably heard of this explosive news. Well, Minister, although it's a little offensive to say this, not everyone is like you, who has been targeted by the cultists since young. Normally speaking, the cultists wouldn't touch the St. Freya Academy's team. This attack is a once-in-100 years event, even the higher-ups of the human race who were in a meeting were alerted. After hearing Jellic's explanation, Luoya couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. But as Jellic explained, the young man realized that his common sense was indeed wrong. After understanding this, Luoya began to listen in detail to the information collected by Jellic. Only then did he know how big this incident was. The first was Dean Antonio. As a survivor of the Leinster tragedy hundreds of years ago, the old man did not hesitate to take over the responsibility of investigating the incident and called for all countries to eliminate the cultists. As Lillian's home country, the Austin Empire also immediately expressed their stance to investigate the incident of the fallen and condemned the poor performance of the Holy See in this regard. Under this general trend, the resolution to clean up the internal affairs was unanimously passed. Antonio's investigation team had also returned to the academy to investigate the incident. After all, the people who were being questioned were actually the ones who had been rescued. Basically, they had not participated in the battle. The question of who killed the Treant priest was brushed aside. If one were to ask in detail, they would not be able to answer at all. However, when he heard that it was an internal inquiry led by Antonio, the young man calmed down. Then it's fine. There was no need for the young man to specifically emphasize. Antonio could handle the matter well. In order to not leave any traces, he might even tamper with the memories of those scholars. And after knowing that there was a big tree to cover for him, Luoya completely let go of the possibility of leaking the secret. In the high-level joint meeting of the various countries, everyone looked at this issue from a qualitative point of view. For the students in the academy, the actual losses of this incident were more important. In other words, the casualties of this incident. However, it turned out that this incident wasn't as terrifying on the surface as imagined. Instead, it was a deliberate attempt to downplay the number of casualties. After the investigation team returned to the academy, the students began to panic as various information leaked out. The outside world adopted an intolerant attitude toward the cultists. Within the country of scholars, the first to stand up for this incident was the School of the Victims. Many schools jointly requested that this matter be investigated thoroughly. After that, the faculty members made a statement. The mentors who often led teams to carry out missions felt that the current mission mechanism of the academy was not enough to ensure the safety of the students and needed to be strengthened. After a series of statements and speeches, the attack on the investigation team could be said to be known to everyone. And Luo Ye's return was at the climax of this incident. He was completely submerged in this lively background. After returning, Luo Ye first found Paul and asked about the situation after he left. According to Paul, they waited in the military town for 3 days before the team sent by the academy arrived. However, due to the strange state of the group, the team failed to take them away. During this process, Lillian did not wait for the academy's response. Instead, she followed the original plan and went to the front line with the army. Paul and the others arrived at the academy half a month later. After treatment and recuperation, their physical condition was restored to how it was before. At this point, the internal investigation of this incident was over. The next step was to investigate the external culprit. In this regard, Luo Ye agreed with both hands and publicly expressed his views to the school newspaper reporters. In front of the members of the news agency, Luo Ye angrily reprimanded the Treant priest who was personally crushed by him, as if he was an innocent passerby with a righteous heart. His superb acting skills made Paul and other insiders call him an expert. After this statement was issued, the last part of this operation was completely completed. Judging from the results of these 3 months, it's not a lot. Looking at the results that could not even fill up a table, Gelt said to Luo Ye with a bitter expression. Obviously, this giant bloodline holder was disgusted by the fake information of various eras in the past few months. Seeing this, Luo Ye nodded and expressed his understanding of the reason why everyone's work efficiency was not high. With this thought in mind, Luo Ye solemnly thanked the tall young man for his efforts. However, he didn't expect that Gelt didn't claim the credit. Instead, he said that reading history books wasn't a job for him. Instead, it was a hobby that made him happy. After thanking and encouraging Gelt, Luo Ye went to see Selina and the others. He found that the 2 young ladies were in good condition, but Stuart needed to rest for a while. It seemed to be the side effect of his eyes. Luo Ye expressed his understanding. After all, the young man's eyes were really useful. Such a powerful detection ability must come with a price. Big brother, you're finally back. Looking at the young man who walked through the door, Ai Lizzie said with tears in her eyes. She suddenly threw herself into the young man's arms. Chapter 480. In the room of Blue Hall, the silver-haired girl threw herself into Luo Ye's arms the moment she saw him. The black-haired boy couldn't help but take a step back and look at the girl in his arms in surprise. Luo Ye was about to ask, but Ai Lizzie had already begun to complain tearfully. The silver-haired girl buried her head in the boy's chest and complained while choking with sobs. Hearing this, the boy was taken aback for a moment and then revealed a guilty expression as he recalled the promise they made before they went to school. Glancing at the members of the White Rose faction following behind the girl, Luo Ye revealed an expression as if he wanted to say something. The 2 first-year girls were taken aback. Although they were surprised to see Ai Lizzie like this, they seemed to be good at reading the situation. After exchanging glances with Luo Ye, they immediately understood and left with their heads lowered. They are your subordinates, right? They have been watching. Now that you are a ring-bearer, aren't you afraid of losing your dignity? From the looks of it, the 2 children seemed to be Ai Lizzie's trusted aides, so they probably wouldn't speak carelessly. On the other hand, unlike Lillian, the relationship between Ai Lizzie and Luo Ye was well known, so there was no need to avoid it. The investigation team's matter this time was very big, which was beneficial for Luo Ye's concealment. Of course, the boy was happy to hear about it, but on the other hand, the girls who stayed behind at the academy weren't feeling well. Hearing those terrifying rumors every day, Ai Lizzie must have been very worried these days. Looking at the tears in the silver-haired girl's eyes, Luo Ye's heart ached. After thinking for a moment, he apologized first. Luo Ye said so with a sincere expression, hoping to get the girl's understanding. Unfortunately, things didn't develop smoothly. After hearing Luo Ya's apology, AI Lizzie didn't immediately respond, but instead turned her head to the side. AI Lizzie's cute face was unmoved by Luo Ya's persuasion, and she didn't turn her head to look at him as if she didn't hear anything. Seeing this situation, Luo Ya felt that something was wrong, but there was nothing he could do. Big brother, have you been sleeping well for the past month? Hearing AI Lizzie's sudden concern, Luo Ya blinked and hesitated for a moment before answering. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong, and just as Luo Ya predicted, the silver-haired girl spoke again after hearing Luo Ya's answer. That, every night, I can only rely on the life orb that you left behind to stay awake. I can't sleep because once I close my eyes, I will have nightmares. I want to use some potions, but ordinary potions are useless for this body, even curses. The black-haired boy couldn't help but hug the girl tightly in his arms. But this time, AI Lizzie didn't stop talking. The silver-haired girl struggled and hit Luo Ya's body while saying with a hoarse voice, every time, you promised me that you wouldn't do anything dangerous, but every time, you lied to me. Big brother, you are a big liar. After struggling for a while, the silver-haired girl finally said what she wanted to say and couldn't help but cry. Seeing AI Lizzie like this, Luo Ya's heart ached and he completely recognized his mistake. Chapter 481. In the room at night, the black-haired boy looked at AI Lizzie in front of him. His originally tired expression turned into one of shock, and he suddenly sat up. Did I not express myself well enough? It's bodily fluids, big brother. You treated me like that before, did you forget so quickly? Thinking about the silver-haired girl's words, the black-haired boy naturally thought of many indescribable things, but then he was slightly stunned. The boy who tasted AI Lizzie's tears before thought so, and his panicked heart calmed down slightly. Although it was bodily fluids, there were many types of fluids with this name. Apart from tears, the most common type of fluid was blood, which could be obtained with a simple cut. I see, AI Lizzie, I understand your request, but let me say this first, I can only provide blood, saliva, and tears. I can't provide anything else. If you want to choose, you can only choose from these three, Oh. It's good that you understand. Of the three options, blood aside, although tears were slightly harder to obtain, it wasn't a big deal. He could just treat it as returning the part of AI Lizzie from before. As for saliva. To be honest, Luo Ya wanted to get rid of it. After all, AI Lizzie used alcohol to alleviate his life's exhaustion last time. After thinking of a way out, Luo Ya looked at the silver-haired girl with a calm smile on his face. But before he could ask, AI Lizzie had already made her choice. Is that so, then? What he chose was actually blood. This. Could it be the result of his usual ideological education? Thinking about how AI Lizzie's choice seemed to be more distant from him than before, Luo Ya felt a faint sense of loss, but this sense of loss was quickly erased by Luo Ya. Rubbing his forehead, the black-haired boy shook his head slightly to get rid of the strange thoughts in his mind. He raised his head and looked at the girl who walked closer step by step. Under the candlelight, her charm increased by another level. He took a cup and aimed it at his wrist. Wait, big brother. Although I said that I want blood, I didn't say that I want you to take it, right? I'll decide on the method. I want to do it myself. Faced with AI Lizzie's request, the black-haired youth frowned in confusion. Seeing this, AI Lizzie revealed a pitiful expression and said softly, wait, I didn't say no. You can do it yourself if you want. Then, it's a deal, big brother. It's simple, use this. Wait. That's the blood breeds. AI Lizzie. What's going on? In the world of Shia, it must have cost a lot to change a person's race to such a degree. Not only did the person who changed the race have to pay the price, but the person who was changed also had to bear a large part of it. Big brother, Please don't worry. I didn't become like this because of Juliana, nor is it because of the blood breed. It's a change under my own control. That's right. In fact, my bloodline seems to have a strange connection with the blood breed, but I'm not a part of them. Or rather, many of the spells that are difficult to use on their side are very simple to me. AI Lizzie and the blood breed actually have some kind of connection. Thinking of this question, Luoya frowned in confusion. Seeing this, the girl explained the situation. According to AI Lizzie, she seemed to be able to learn most of the blood breed's spells. Her current appearance was also changed through spells. Although these things are a bit unbelievable, Big Brother, that's not the main point. At this time, AI Lizzie was extremely cute. Her narrowed eyes had a unique aura of desire. Her smiling face was full of eagerness as if she was a child who got a new toy. AI Lizzie. It's nothing if it hurts, but, Luoya hesitated for a moment and didn't say it out loud. On the other side, AI Lizzie stretched out her hand and pulled her collar, revealing a white neck. Her eyes stared into the boy's eyes as her breathing quickened slightly. Yeah. AI Lizzie. You're. So it's like that. Feeling the girl licking him like rubbing alcohol on an injection, the black-haired boy naturally accepted AI Lizzie's words. However, what the boy didn't see was that at this time, beside his cheek, the silver-haired girl's red eyes flashed with a smile of her plan succeeding. As a highly intelligent creature, the blood breeds naturally couldn't hunt everywhere like animals. Not only did the quality of the blood they obtained fluctuate, but it was also unstable. With human intelligence, they chose to have people voluntarily deliver themselves to them, and the method was the blood breed's saliva. Because of this extreme pleasure and small price to pay, in ancient times, many races were willing to serve the blood breeds in exchange for this pleasure. However, as the number of such people increased, the drawbacks of indulging in indulgence began to backfire. The blood breeds gradually turned from the masters to the addicts, and this led to a crisis for the blood breeds. Since then, the blood breeds were strictly prohibited from casually sucking blood. Looking at the boy in front of her, the silver-haired girl pulled up her hair and stuck out her pink little tongue, seriously preparing for the pretreatment. AI Lizzie, are you still not done? Actually, I'm not that afraid of pain. Perhaps feeling the girl's strange behavior, Luoya couldn't help but ask. AI Lizzie estimated the dosage, then nodded, opened her red lips, and two cute little fangs fell towards the boy's neck. Is this, Big Brother's blood? At first, the skin being pierced was nothing, not only was it not painful, it was even a little itchy, but after that, everything started to become strange. Feeling the soft touch in front of his chest, looking at the waist outlined by the dress, the slender legs wrapped in black stockings, and the absolute territory hidden in the skirt fluttering, the black-haired boy suddenly had the urge to tightly hug the girl in front of him. On the other hand, Luoya felt his consciousness becoming a little hazy. Wait, something's not right, Big Brother, believe me, this is a normal reaction. That's right, it's the pleasure of sucking blood. Does Big Brother feel good? Luoya, who discovered that AI Lizzie's sucking blood had another meaning, slightly widened his eyes. He didn't know how to answer the girl's question. Looking at the boy who was hesitant to answer, AI Lizzie raised the corner of her mouth, and softly whispered in Luoya's ear. AI Lizzie. If you like it or hate it, of course I like it, but this feeling is a little too strong. The silver-haired girl said so, and she began to blow air into the boy's ear. On the other side, Luoya's expression changed. What does it matter? Big Brother has already agreed to let me decide the method of blood collection, and isn't Big Brother very comfortable? Although Juliana has this ability, she doesn't have that kind of feelings for you, and only AI Lizzie can make you feel this kind of joy. Sensing this, the black-haired boy trembled, and he realized that the flame in his body was on the verge of going out of control, so he hurriedly tried to dissuade her. No. I don't want it to end like this, I want more. Hearing the girl's bold words, Luoya couldn't help but turn his head in surprise, only to see the silver-haired, red-eyed girl's face flushed red as if she was drunk. Looking at this AI Lizzie, the boy couldn't help but blink in surprise, but then he recalled Juliana's evaluation after tasting his blood in the past. Seeing that AI Lizzie was obviously different from usual, Luoya was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect his blood to be so intoxicating, but this wasn't the main point now. While Luoya was in a daze, the silver-haired girl began to pant and kiss the boy's neck, and her hands began to reach down, aiming at Luoya's waist. Seeing that she was about to touch his belt, the black-haired boy fiercely bit his lips, and then suddenly stood up with AI Lizzie in his arms. "I'm not drunk, big brother is, stop dawdling, what, I don't want," although AI Lizzie had drunk in the past, but she was far from drunk to this extent. This time, when she was completely drunk, Luoya realized that AI Lizzie seemed to be the type that was especially willful when drunk. Is she too sleepy and wants to go to bed? Although AI Lizzie's face was full of drunkenness, there was a mischievous smile on her face. After taking off her shoes, the girl's slender legs wrapped in black stockings didn't fall to the floor. Instead, she raised her legs to hook the boy's sensitive spot. Luoya's expression changed when he saw AI Lizzie's intention. His brain quickly heated up, and he understood that he had to give the girl some punishment. Thinking of this, Luoya gritted his teeth, picked up the girl, and threw her onto the bed in the room. He pressed down on the girl's waist and slapped the soft flesh under AI Lizzie's skirt. Perhaps it was because she fell onto the bed, or because of the sudden pain, the girl who was slapped became slightly more awake. AI Lizzie screamed and looked at the boy in surprise, but Luoya didn't show any mercy. After more than 10 slaps, the silver-haired girl cried out in pain. After the girl's begging for mercy for a long time, Luoya finally stopped. AI Lizzie's arched body on the bed finally relaxed, and she fell onto the bed. But to the boy's surprise, the AI Lizzie who fell on the bed didn't seem angry. Instead, her eyes were blurred, and not to mention her cheeks, even her ears were dyed with a layer of red. Do you continue?" Facing the girl's question, Luoya was stunned for a moment. The silver-haired girl saw this and her face became even redder. She bit her lips and trembled as she propped up her legs. She looked pitiful and as if she was expecting something, she asked. The moment he heard this question, Luoya's mind went blank. Intense flames rose in his body as if it was about to explode. In the next moment, the black-haired boy stood up and rushed into the bathroom. "You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.